Chapter 171, Industrialized Elbaf, Preparing to Depart. I announce that Kane, from this day forward, officially assumes the role of the new king of Elbaf. After checking there were no more challengers, Yoruru and the other elders delivered the verdict decisively, cutting the challenge short. Now, please welcome King Kane to speak. Kane walked slowly to the center of the arena, eyes sweeping over thousands of faces fixed on him. He cleared his throat and, without wasting words, announced Elbaf's plan to build factories. He argued that with the world changing so rapidly, Elbaf needed a more open mind and a more proactive stance. Thanks to Harald's long-term efforts, most giants accepted Kane's reforms. A small faction of warriors, still wedded to traditional raiding and plunder, preferred the old ways to manufacturing. To them, Kane presented his going-out strategy. Elbaf would re-establish the giant warrior pirates and affiliate them with the Beast Pirates, with the crew jointly commanded by Captain Dory and Captain Brogy. Long live King Kane! The declaration instantly won overwhelming support from the warlike giants. Kane had reconciled dissenting voices and consolidated the nation under his rule. If he delivered on his promises, the giants would be a loyal, formidable force. With the major decisions settled, the arena moved on to what every giant loved most, and what the pirate world envied. Now, it's feast time. Kane raised his arm and shouted. A thunderous roar rose from the crowd, the sound shaking the sky. After the day's bloody contest, everyone wanted to celebrate. As the giants bustled to prepare the feast, Kane found Principal Chiba and ordered an increase in the children's combat training. As king, it was a simple command. You're amazing, Kane. You actually became king of the giants. His companions crowded around, beaming with congratulations. After joking with them for a while, Kane slipped away to a quieter corner of the arena and took out a den mushi. Hey, Kane, what do you want from me? Came Teacher Kaido's rare, sober voice on the line. Kane was momentarily taken aback, then replied calmly, Teacher Kaido, it seems I accidentally took over all of Elbaf. There was a stunned pause on the other end. What do you mean? Kane let a small smile show and answered, I mean, from now on, please address me as King Kane. Silence for a few seconds, then Kaido's booming laugh exploded through the receiver. Ugh, Lolo, well done, Kane. You achieved in half a month what that old hag Linlin dreamed of her whole life. He chuckled cruelly. I'd love to see that old hag's disappointed face right now. As expected of longtime siblings, Kaido's first reaction was to make fun of his sister. When the laughter died down, Kane explained his development plan for Elbaf. Kaido cut him off with a single line. Do whatever you want with it. Go discuss it with King, and hung up, trusting Kane implicitly. With the giant's military strength on his side, whether factories or raids, it didn't matter to him. Kane shrugged at the silent den mushi and dialed another ally he trusted. This person listened more seriously. Kane explained the practical limits of Elbaf's potential. Are you sure at first we only plan to supply ordinary mechanical parts? The ally asked. Absolutely, Kane replied. Elbaf did possess an oddity, an owl that could enlarge inorganic matter. If exploited without restraint, that power could allow Elbaf to flood the world market with near-costless industrial products. 1 gram of gold enlarged to tons. Such an advantage would break every market. But the owl's ability required continuous maintenance by its user and had range limits, so it wasn't an exploitable bug. Instead, Elbaf's real advantage lay in its vast resources, especially high-quality iron ore. Almost every giant warrior carried finely wrought iron weapons. Kane's plan was to ride those resource advantages into shipbuilding. The giant race already had unparalleled shipbuilding skills. How many human yards Galila Company owed a debt to the giant's legendary Big Hammer battle group. Their brewing craft was also renowned. Fine alcohol was high-value trade across the seas. Kane intended to develop iron and shipbuilding industries first, then expand outward. For weeks, Kane stayed on Elbaf personally, overseeing the reforms. Tall smelting furnaces rose like steel behemoths, chimneys belching black smoke day and night. Molten steel was poured into molds and cooled. Machine shops sprang up and began turning out parts. With plentiful raw materials, the ancient warrior nation roared onto the industrial fast lane. The changes stunned many. Hajrudin, just back from a voyage, stopped dead in his tracks as if he'd walked into the wrong place. What's going on? Where did all these factories come from, and these humans? He'd been at sea only half a year, but it looked as if decades had passed. Elbaf had always been slow and traditional. Even under King Harold, there had never been such rapid transformation. What shocked Hyruden most was how humans now moved freely through the port and streets, chatting casually with giants. No fear, no standoffishness. He even saw human craftsmen sitting on a stone beside a giant warrior and talking about family matters. This was not the Elbaf he knew. Full of questions, Hajrudin and his companions went to the small tavern he remembered, only to find it closed. A wooden sign hung on the doorknob. For urgent matters, please go to the West Village Brewery to find me. Where's Mado? When did West Village get another brewery? Hajrudin scratched his head. A familiar voice answered nearby. Hajrudin, you're back? Teacher Reading? He brightened at the sight of his old teacher, but then frowned at Reading's outfit. Aside from the greatsword and helmet, Reading wore a full suit of well-crafted armor that rang with a metallic clang when he tapped it. In old Elbaf, such luxury was unheard of. Oh, this! Reading rapped his chestplate with his knuckles and smiled proudly. Hajrudin, while you were at sea, Elbaf has changed, enormously. He quickly summarized the transformations. The most visible was the steel industry. With blast furnaces and steady supply, the shortage of iron and steel was over. Now we can easily forge armor and weapons, and we've even started building ironclads. He pointed toward the port where giant shipwrights were fitting keels and steel plates, while human workers handled finer fittings. To giants, tens of meters-long ships were like enlarged models. A giant crew could cut months off a human shipyard's schedule. King Kane said these sturdy ships are very popular in the human world. King Kane? Hajrudin blurted. He had expected to be the giant king. Who was this Kane? Reading explained that Kane was a human who had defeated Elbaf's warriors in a single day and night and now ruled as king. Hajrudin and his crew gaped. Unlike his companions' astonished admiration, Hajrudin's face darkened with frustration. I'm the one who's supposed to be king. He clenched his fists. Tell me where Kane is. I won't accept him until I beat him. Reading looked at his stubborn disciple with something like approval. Brave, determined. Those were virtues of an Elbaf warrior. King Kane is in Ulstort Castle. Then I'll challenge him, Hajrudin said. His crew laughed and promised to follow. I'm not letting you take the glory alone, they said. Ulstort Castle, the cliffside fortress of West Village where Harald once lived, had been abandoned after the great battle between Loki and Harald. Because it was a hub on Elbaf's tree road, Kane chose it as a temporary administrative center. Inside the spacious office, Kane hunched over documents. He signed the last parchment and sighed, Ah, finally, the initial arrangements are done. Robin, acting as his secretary, handed him a cup of tea and smiled. It's busy, but everyone can see how much Elbaf is changing. It's worth it. Kane set the pen down and looked at Robin with obvious appreciation. Today she wore a tailored suit and a neat skirt. She looked sharp and composed. Practical encouragement would be appreciated, he joked. Robin feigned innocence with a flirtatious blink. Before Kane could press his advantage and pull her to his lap, the heavy office door burst open. Kane, accept my challenge. A loud, passionate voice cut through the room. Kane's smile froze. Robin rose gracefully, smoothed her skirt, and whispered into his ear with a teasing smile. This time, not that I'm unwilling. Kane's eyes swept over the 5 giants who filed in. Who are you? We are the new giant warrior pirates, Hajrudin announced. I'm Captain Hajrudin. These are Stanson, Rode, Goldberg, and Garls. He issued his challenge to the king. Normally, with your current strength, I wouldn't accept this personally. Kane rose, adjusted his collar, and with calm authority said, But right now I'm in a very, very bad mood. So, as you wish. Robin covered a small laugh. Here? No need, Kane replied curtly. Come at me together. I'm busy. Wait, Hajrudin spread his arms, stopping his crew. This is my battle alone. It's for my dream. Don't interfere. The crew hesitated, worried, but they knew their captain and stepped back. Agreed. Begin. Hajrudin's pupils contracted, Kane's figure blurred, and in the next instant he was face to face with the king. Before he could react, a pitch-black fist like a cannonball smashed into his forehead. Bang! A dull thud echoed. Hajrudin's skull crumpled inward. His eyes rolled back and his massive body went limp, collapsing as if into a child's sleep. One hit. KO. Kane had restrained himself to avoid damaging the repaired castle. He'd struck hard enough to render Hajruddin unconscious without wrecking the walls. Hajruddin! Captain! The new giant warrior pirates rushed forward and carefully supported their fallen captain. Garls, the crew's medic, checked him and exhaled in relief. Hajruddin wasn't dead. His head wasn't crushed. He was knocked out. Kane flicked his hand as if brushing off a speck of dust. Take him to the doctor. With a giant's constitution, give him a few days of rest and he'll be back on his feet. The crew bowed, no trace of defiance left. Yes, King Kane. As they carried Hajruddin away, Kane turned to Robin with a grin. After we wrap up Elbaf's final matters, it's time for us to set sail again. They had stayed long enough. The sea was calling again. Chapter 172, Loki and Chiffon's First Encounter. 3 mornings later, warm sunlight spilled over Elbaf's busy harbor as the Red Force eased into port. Shanks was the first to leap ashore, closely followed by his crew, ready to set foot on familiar ground. What they saw froze them in their tracks. All of this is because of that man, Calamity Kane, someone breathed. Seeing it with my own eyes. I can't believe it, another replied. The red-hair pirates stared at Elbaf, orderly, bustling, vibrant, unable to hide their amazement. Beckman, cigarette dangling from his lips, said, I've heard Kane's good at governing. Turns out the rumors were sold short. Shanks nodded, a flash of pleasure crossing his face rather than annoyance. Looks like our giant friends are about to enjoy better times. Lucky Roo, gnawing a massive bone, muttered through a mouthful. Boss, you could have been King Shanks, and now Kane steals the title. You don't regret that at all? Boss, if you want to cry, we'll promise not to laugh. Pfft. Yasopp couldn't finish before bursting into laughter. The rest of the crew followed. You bastards, stop teasing me. Shanks feigned indignation and tapped Yasopp on the head, which only made everyone laugh louder. Ha! Shanks, you're late. A hearty laugh came from nearby. Jabba walked over with an easy gait. Shanks, understanding the barb, gave a helpless shake of his head and a wry smile. Spare me. I'm hopeless at running a country. Better not to make trouble for Elbaf. What the giants gained from him was the protection of the Emperor Pirates, a prestige many sought, but to the fierce nation of Elbaf that might not be the most critical thing. Hongo seized the moment to roast their captain. I can vouch for it. Shanks doesn't even know how much treasure we have on our own ship. Ha! The red-hair pirate's laughter carried across the pier. After a round of pleasantries, Jabba briefed them on Elbaf's recent state. The visit was mainly to check whether Kane, now absent, had any designs against the country. If trouble arose, they would lend a hand. Rather than signs of war, Elbaf was thriving, more lively than ever. The beast's pirate's strength seems to have leveled up again, Beckman observed, drawing a long drag from his cigarette and frowning minutely. Their relationship with the beast's pirates had never been friendly. If conflict came, the giants would be a factor, even though they were on good terms, projecting power matters. Shanks clapped Beckman's shoulder with a carefree grin. Relax, Beckman. I've got this. I'm invincible. Stop bragging, Beckman muttered, but his tight brows softened. A helpless, trusting smile tugged at his mouth. Elsewhere, the Rayquaza sliced through the New World's waves. On deck, Kane held a den mushi to his ear, speaking quietly. Are you sure the information is reliable? You should know what I do by now, came Stussy's silky voice, laced with charm. An ancient giant's physique sticks out like a sore thumb, but he's a big pirate, 2,600,000 berries. 200 million more than you, Lord Kane. Are you sure you want to capture him? Kane snorted. Bounties don't tell the whole story. I've been laying low lately. A soft, amused chuckle answered. Stussy shifted topics. One more thing. Loki's current position is sensitive, almost at Totoland. Linlin has had her eye on giants for some time. Kane's reply was sure. I'm going to take Loki. Not even a Yonko can stop me. Then I wish you success, Lord Kane. Thanks for the tip. Stussy's voice turned flirtatious. Words are cheap, perhaps a practical reward? Her tone fluttered like a teasing feather. Kane brushed off the flirtation and then felt several heated gazes from around him. He lowered his voice. Get ready. I'll come to you after I finish my business. Stussy hung up with a teasing smile. Kane put the den mushi away. Turning, he found several pretty faces watching him, expressions different and unreadable. He cleared his throat and assumed a stern mien. Reliable sources say Loki is in the sea near Totoland, Rayquaza full speed ahead. As long as he kept his dignity, others would get embarrassed. Kozuki Hiyori, Robin, Violet, and Reiju exchanged a look, subtly coordinated. Drain him dry, one seemed to ask. Absolutely, another answered. They shared a silent, unanimous plan. Make sure Loki had no energy left for flirting. A few days later, southeast of Totoland, Soft Island, an island that looked like a confectioner's dream, was filled with buildings shaped like cupcakes and Swiss rolls. A constant aroma of butter and cream hung in the air. A crude raft flew in, bearing a pirate flag with a crown and skull emblem, and rudely entered the island's waters. So fragrant. I'm starving, rumbled a giant 60, maybe 70 meters tall, clutching his empty stomach. He wore a wide-brimmed war helmet pierced by two long horns. Dark purple hair stuck out messily. His eyes were bandaged, but he still sensed everything. This was Loki, the escaped prince of Elbaf. The raft splashed ashore. Each of Loki's heavy steps made the ground tremble. Islanders panicked. A giant pirate! Run! Notify Minister Chiffon! Loki ignored the chaos and began hunting for food, swinging his enormous hammer, Iron Thunder, at buildings that smelled most delicious. One swing reduced pastry shops to rubble. He dove into the wreckage, grabbed handfuls of cake and sweets, and shoved them into his mouth. Charlotte Chiffon arrived with a squad of Homie's soldiers. Seeing the giant sitting among the debris, shoveling pastries in like a child, she suppressed her anger and shouted, "Stop!" Loki barely paused. His chewing went on, as if the world contained nothing but him and the food. Chiffon bannered forward, frowning. "If you're hungry, I can give you food, but stop destroying the buildings." "It takes time and effort for the residents to rebuild," she added, hoping to reach him. That finally made Loki hesitate. He turned slowly, impatient raw in his voice. "Are you annoying? I like to eat like this." His sentence faltered when he looked at Chiffon. She was plain, with thick lips, but something in her face hid a buried seam inside him. Time seemed to warp. A fuzzy memory surfaced. A kindly, plain woman offering him cake. "Loki, are you hungry? Try the cake I baked." "No. Mama, why give this guy your cake? I haven't eaten yet." "Hajrudin, Loki is your brother. Be kinder." "They're not brothers," came the bickering fragments of childhood. Loki went blank. Chiffon noticed the odd expression and frowned harder. Did her calm negotiation fail? Acting on impulse, she gave Loki a fierce kick to the calf. Bang! Ouch! Loki's roar echoed. Chiffon nearly cried from the effort. Her kick felt as if it hit steel. Her foot swelled instantly, and she was hit by stinging pain in return. How could he be so strong, she thought, stunned. She knew her own strength. While no match for Katakuri, most couldn't take a full-force Chiffon kick, but this giant had seemed unaffected. Chiffon's eyes fell on the hammer beside him, and she froze. The giant's physique, the hammer, a dreaded name clicked into place. "You're the cursed prince, Loki," she blurted, voice trembling. Those words snapped Loki back to reality. He snorted and corrected her with a puffed-up tone. "Call me the sun god, Elbaf's greatest warrior." But Chiffon wasn't listening to that. She was thinking of the bounty, 2,600,000 berries, and the trail of destruction that had followed him across the seas. She was outmatched. This was a foe she had to bring to her brother Katakuri. Or, if necessary, alert Mama herself. She barked orders. "Notify Cake Island at once. Loki is here." Loki blinked at the name. "Cake Island? Have I drifted into Tato land?" He still showed no fear, even on the territory of a Yonku. "Which of Charlotte Linland's kids are you?" he asked, curious. Chiffon folded her arms and said nothing, studying him like a guard on watch. Then a young male voice came from behind her. "Charlotte Chiffon, the 22nd daughter of the Charlotte family. Did I get that wrong?" Chiffon spun around. Her eyes nearly popped out. "Calamity Kane? Why was he here too?" She felt like shrieking inside. This was one awful day. Both men standing before her were beyond her ability to handle. She wanted Katakuri, someone on his level. Kane, for his part, hadn't expected this either. He had planned to watch the first meeting unfold between Loki and Chiffon, perhaps the start of Loki's first love. He couldn't help the private amusement that flickered through him. Looking at Chiffon's tense face, he offered a gentle smile. "Don't worry, Chiffon. I'm not interested in you. I'm here for him." His gaze slid past Chiffon and locked with Loki's. Loki's attention shifted. A hush fell over the island as the invisible pressure between two strong people spread through the sweet-scented air. Chapter 173, V.S. Loki. Calamity Kane, I hear you're very strong? Loki hefted the fearsome giant hammer, Iron Thunder, with one hand, his massive body rising from the ground as a wild, untamed grin spread across his face. Dogaha! Let's fight until one of us falls. Kane only wagged a finger at him, unhurried. They call me Calamity, and I don't argue with that. But you, Loki, he changed his tone and spoke with the authority of a ruler. You should call me King Kane if you still see yourself as part of Elbaf. Loki's grin dropped. For the first time since his wounds had been bandaged, a look of unease flashed across his face. Someone suggesting he might have been falsely accused after all, after so many years, was a shocking thought. The hesitation was brief, drowned by a hotter rage. His father's throne, occupied by a human? Had the giants of Elbaf all become soft? A mere human on Elbaf's throne? Die! He roared and swung Iron Thunder high into the sky. The moment the hammer rose, a muffled thunder rolled through the heavens. Where there had been clear blue, dark clouds swelled rapidly, lightning snaked across the sky, and daylight dimmed. Kane glanced up at the brewing storm with a teasing lilt. Oh, you can call the lightning too? Named Loki, doing Thor's work. Trying to show off his thunder in front of Kane was like flaunting a tool before the master who invented it. Kane waved a hand. The thick banks of cloud broke apart and retreated as if an invisible giant drew back a curtain. Brilliant sunlight flooded the island again. The casualness of dispersing the storm stunned everyone on Soft Island. Should we head out to sea and hide? Someone cried. Is that even a question? Run! When gods clash, mortals suffer. People who still had their wits about them saw Chiffon lingering near the battlefield and shouted for her to flee. Chiffon, always kind to the islanders, hurried to the port, organizing the homies' soldiers to get everyone to safety. Kane and Loki tacitly agreed not to stop the evacuation. Soon the field between them was empty. No more annoying bystanders, Loki snarled, grinning ferociously. He wrapped Iron Thunder in crackling lightning and slammed it at Kane with the aura of destruction. The hammer, whose weight no one dared guess, shrieked through the air as it swung. It smashed against Kane's crossed arms. For a few seconds, the two stood locked, then Kane was blasted backward like a baseball launched from a bat. Buildings crumbled as he tore through Cake Island, his momentum carrying him past the coastline, carving a long white wake across the sea. A single hammer blow from Loki had sent Kane off Soft Island. This strength is ridiculous, exactly what you'd expect from someone who could massacre the underworld at birth. Kane complained as he flew, calmer than the situation warranted. In raw strength, his human form could not match this cursed prince. The desire to possess someone like Loki only intensified. A familiar ship came into view. Hey, Kane, why are you back? Yamato waved from the rail. Kane touched down lightly on the deck of the Rayquaza, adjusting his posture and laughing awkwardly. I got accidentally knocked away. A bit embarrassing. Is that Loki strong? Yamato's eyes lit up with battle hunger. If I don't transform, I can't take him down, Kane admitted. Then I'll go meet him. Yamato leaped over the rail and dove into the sea. White fur quickly covered her body in a flash of light. She had assumed her beastman form. She bounded across the water, freezing it beneath her feet into a trailing ice path, and vanished toward the fight. Kane shook his head with a wry smile. Let her go. Yamato liked to act first and report later. Kazuki Hiyori stared after Yamato, worried. Do you think she'll be okay? Given that even Kane couldn't easily beat Loki, Yamato's odds looked slim. Kane put a hand comforting on Hiyori's shoulder. Don't worry, I'll follow and check on her. You all catch up and speed up. The Charlotte family has heard the news and will arrive soon. Kane had no doubt of Linlin's appetite for strength. On Cake Island, Charlotte Linlin was suddenly up from her throne the moment she heard Loki was on Soft Island, dropping a slice of cake in her haste. Zeus! Mama, I'm here! Zeus answered cheerfully as Linlin hopped onto the cloud. Head to Soft Island at once, she ordered. Yes, Mama. Allow us to accompany you, a calm voice said. Katakuri stepped forward, with Smoothie and Cracker behind him. Chiffon's report said Calamity Kane is there too. Kane? Linlin's annoyance at the name was mixed with grudging respect. He could ruin her plan to recruit Loki. Then together. She waved, calling her strongest children onto Zeus. Depart? Back on Soft Island, the place was nearly rubble. Yamato's sharp shouts rang out as her spiked club and Loki's giant hammer met again and again. The shockwaves leveled the surrounding desert structures as if they were fragile biscuits. Despite using all her strength, Yamato seemed barely to faze Loki. "You want to defeat me? Your skill is nowhere near enough." Loki laughed, and black and red lightning swathed Iron Thunder as he smashed it down with the force to split mountains. Yamato, bloodied but undeterred, grinned and answered, "Which is why defeating you matters even more." She struck with a Thunder Bagua. The club, wrapped in Conqueror's Haki, met the hammer. The two did not physically touch, yet an invisible barrier of Haki collided with a thunderous roar. The burst of energy tore something in the sky. Loki's expression flickered with surprise, then darkened into a cruel smile. "You have it too." He stomped with such force the ground shattered. Drawing recoil, his arm muscles bulged as he poured more Conqueror's Haki into the hammer. Yamato tightened her grip, trying to hold, but the difference in raw power was overwhelming. She was sent flying. Kane, who had just shifted into his beastman form and flown back, arrived in time to catch the hurt Yamato. "He's really strong," she gasped, blood at the corner of her mouth, but exhilarated by the fight. "You did well. Rest," Kane said, guiding her to safety, then turned his gaze to the towering figure at the center of the ruins. Loki looked slightly surprised to see Kane so quickly returned. "You came back fast," he sneered. "You're stronger than that white-haired girl." He stuck his tongue out and laughed. "But your end will be the same." Loki charged first. "Sunhammer," he roared. "Dragon Claw," Kane answered. Hammer and claw crashed in midair. Two peaks of Conqueror's Haki met and detonated, sending a shockwave like a tsunami across Soft Island. Buildings shattered and were ground to dust. The aftermath threatened to level the whole island. "Dogahaha! Only someone with this kind of power is worthy of being my opponent." Loki laughed, intoxicated with battle. Kane transformed fully in his beastman form, better for close combat, and met him blow for blow. Each collision made the earth tremble, yet both fighters noticed the same unnerving thing. Their strikes were being anticipated, dodged or blocked before they landed. It felt as if each could predict the other's moves. Kane attacked and spoke between strikes. "You can use that too. Observation Haki, predicting the future." Loki laughed with arrogant confidence. "A mere glimpse of the future? That won't stop me." "Is that so? Then do you know how to beat an opponent who can read the future?" Kane's mouth curved into a meaningful smile. Extreme speed. Loki's alarm sounded too late. Kane vanished. A green streak of light, too fast for the eye, slammed into Loki's chest. The impact spasmed Loki's organs. He spat blood and flew backward as if flung from a catapult, crossing the island. "See? If you move faster than someone can react after they see it, it works." Kane stayed where he was, smiling. He'd noticed Loki's raw strength far outclassed his agility. That relative weakness, minor against lesser foes, was enough for Kane to exploit. The blow was grievous but not fatal. Loki's roar shook the sky, and from the far end of the island, a pillar of scorching fire erupted with astonishing diameter. The flames spread, and from them emerged a flame giant over 100 meters tall, its body a walking inferno. The heat shriveled nearby trees into ash and melted the ground into molten magma. No wonder the Elbaf royal family has kept that devil fruit sealed for generations and never eaten it themselves. Kane said, eyes narrowing as understanding clicked into place. An Atom tree is still wood, it burns. The royal family's kingdom, built around Atom, made them avoid a power so destructive to their heritage. The flame giant strode forward, each step cracking the earth, and stood before Kane. Kane tilted his head with interest despite the unbearable heat. "What devil fruit is that? Human fruit, mythical Zoan, Surtur form?" Loki stiffened. The fruit was a legendary treasure the Elbaf royals guarded in secret. Most giants didn't even know of it. "How do you know?" Kane shrugged. "A guess." The flame giant form was too iconic. With Elbaf as its origin, the answer was obvious. Chapter 174, V.S. Loki, Part 2. "Consider yourself honored. This is the first time I've ever shown this form outside." Loki's voice rolled like molten rock, overflowing with absolute confidence. He swung his enormous hammer high, and searing flames crawled across it, turning the head a blistering red and radiating unbearable heat. "Die, insect!" With a deafening roar, the burning hammer came down. As it fell, a column of violent fire erupted from beneath Kane's feet, enveloping him completely. Loki allowed himself a triumphant smile, but before it could fully form, a figure wrapped in golden light tore through the inferno and charged at him. Bang! A punch wreathed in frigid cold and Haki slammed into Loki's chest. The extreme cold and overwhelming Haki Kane controlled poured into Loki like a breached dam. Boom! The impact detonated, a world-shaking explosion that sent out a terrifying shockwave. A mushroom cloud of smoke and debris shot into the sky. Soft Island trembled and groaned under the force. Giant, bottomless fissures webbed outward from the collision. When the dust settled, a massive humanoid crater yawned at the center, so deep the bottom could not be seen. Kane stood on the rim, taut as a drawn bow, waiting for his opponent to reemerge. Just over 10 seconds later, a massive flaming hand surged from the pit and gripped the crater's edge. Loki hauled his enormous, raging body clear, but he was not the composed adversary he'd been. The flames around him flickered erratically. Several teeth had been knocked out by the blow. He looked disheveled. He panted, fixing Kane with a glare. Without answering, he renewed his attack. The flaming hammer swung again. "Do you surrender?" Kane asked casually, an eyebrow raised. "You should know by now how wide the gap between us is." "How tedious. You won't give up unless I beat you flat then," Loki snarled. Kane sighed. Elbaf warriors were steady allies, but stubborn opponents. Bang! He simply raised an arm and met the hammer blow head-on. The ground beneath him gave way, collapsing into a vast pit under the force, but Kane himself remained unmoved, steady as stone, still with strength in reserve to trade blows. Loki gaped. Kane had blocked it, still standing, not even a half-step back. "Impossible! My strength is unrivaled," he bellowed, disbelief turning to fury. Loki's reaction was to swing again and again, each violent attack met and nullified by Kane. Clang! 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 Kane's voice cut through the roar of impacts, calm and unshakable. "In this form, my strength, speed, and defense, all of them surpass yours. Even so, finishing Loki quickly would not be easy." The ancient giant race were tenacious, and the mythical Zoan's buffs made him ridiculously durable. Collisions continued to shatter the earth as day bled into night and night into dawn. The duel had raged for a full day and a night. The islanders who had fled to sea watched their homeland, charred, spewing flame and bone-deep frost, with stunned, fearful faces. Unease spread. Maybe they should really consider leaving for good. On the ship's bow, Chiffon, fresh from contacting Katakuri, stared at the hellish sight, worry etched across her features. Big brother Katakuri and the others had rushed here. Would they be all right? Would they win? She clenched her fists to steady herself. He'll be fine. He never lets his back touch the ground. Across the island, aboard the Rayquaza anchored opposite, Yamato and her companions watched the relentless clash. To hold Kane off this long, even an admiral couldn't do this, Kozuki Hiyori murmured, eyes wide with respect. Violet, watching through clairvoyance, suddenly gasped. "Someone's coming." "Who?" Kuma asked immediately. Violet's voice tightened. "It's Charlotte Linlin. She's riding a cloud, coming here now. The sweet commanders are on the cloud with her." Cake Island was not close. Linlin must have moved at top speed the moment she learned of the battle. The obsession she had with the giant race's power was clearly fanatical. "How long until she arrives?" Robin asked. "No more than half an hour at that speed," Violet replied. "Can we contact Kane?" Reiju asked. "The Den Mushi was destroyed," Robin said gravely. "If we want to notify him now, we have to go straight onto the battlefield. I'll go." To everyone's surprise, Eneru stepped forward. "You need to hurry." Eneru teleported with the Gorogoro no Mi, emerging beside Kane while avoiding roiling shockwaves and breathlessly relaying the news of the Charlotte family's imminent arrival. Then a streak of smugness crossed his face. He crossed his arms and cocked his chin toward the flaming giant. "If you beg this god, perhaps this god will show mercy and help you with this big idiot. What do you say?" Kane hadn't replied when Loki flared. "You weakling bug, you dare call yourself a god?" It struck a raw nerve. Loki ignored Kane's words and swung his hammer straight at Eneru. Kane saw and acted to interrupt. He lunged to strike Loki in the chest, half trying to force him to defend. But Loki took the hit without flinching, bearing Kane's punch to batter at Eneru that he might finish him. Eneru's eyes widened. Instinctively, he tried to disperse into lightning, but the hammer anticipated his escape, blocking his path. Bang! A devastating blow infused with Conqueror's haki shattered his dispersed form. Blood spouted from his nose and mouth. He flew backward like a kite with a cut string and smashed into distant ground, opening a deep pit. If Kane's punch hadn't briefly stalled Loki's momentum, Eneru might have been dead. Loki staggered back several steps from Kane's blow, flames dimming briefly. Spitting hot lava at the ground, he sneered, "A god! Ha! I couldn't even withstand one strike from him." In the pit, Eneru lifted his throbbing head and locked onto the flaming giant. Humiliation burned through him. Something stirred within, an awakening of Haoshoku, Conqueror's haki, barely a whisper, and already it swelled. Loki smirked. "Too late to awaken your Haoshoku now," he taunted. He didn't bother to finish Eneru personally. With a casual curl of his massive palm, an orange-red ember kindled in his hand. He flicked it toward Eneru's position. The spark swelled into a pillar of flame more than 10 meters wide, plunging down upon the trapped god. "Turn to ash!" Eneru's pupils shrank as the inferno bore down. He tried to move, but his body felt as if it were falling apart, his skeleton racked with pain. Heat singed his hair and skin. He closed his eyes, accepting the end. What a pity, he thought. He had never set foot on that boundless land. "Kane, damn you, go and see it for me." The fire was about to consume him when Kane's voice sounded beside him like a benediction. "You want to touch my crewmate? Did you ask my permission?" Before the sentence finished, a pitch-black fist smashed into the pillar of flames. Boom! The fire shattered into flying sparks. The shockwave whipped Kane's hair and clothes, but he stood fast on the pit's rim like a mountain. Eneru stared at him, a flood of complex warmth swelling in his chest. "Eneru, can you still move?" Pain and blood roared in his ears, but Eneru flashed his arrogant grin. "He's 100 years too early to kill me." He forced himself up on will alone. Kane met his gaze, calm but resolute. "Get back to the ship. Leave this to me." Eneru clenched his jaw and nodded. "Don't lose, bastard." He leaped into a streak of lightning and vanished, glancing back once at Loki, as if etching the giant's image into memory. "This god will get his revenge," he swore. At the center of the battlefield, Kane and Loki faced each other across the shattered earth. Kane broke the silence. "Time's running out. This farce has to end." He had to finish the fight before the Charlotte family arrived. If Linlin showed up mid-battle, it would be obvious where she'd throw her weight. Loki sneered. "Arrogant, the victor isn't decided yet." He raised the flaming hammer to point at Kane, fury in his face. Kane's eyes were no longer locked on Loki. He bent his knees, then exploded upward, the ground detonating beneath him. He rocketed into the sky like a reversed meteor. As he climbed, his massive dragon-human form swelled, growing still larger. "Mega Rayquaza, descend!" Loki thought for a moment that Kane might be fleeing, then discarded that notion. Kane wasn't a coward. He was preparing the finishing move. Pressure slammed into Loki's chest, and then his observation haki screamed a warning. He looked up in time to see a point of brilliant green light flare in the sky and plunge toward him at impossible speed. "Bring it!" Loki roared. Flames leapt from his form with renewed ferocity, turning him into a world-devouring fire god between heaven and earth. He gripped his hammer with both hands, pouring every ounce of strength, haki, and burning will into it to meet the falling green light head-on. Chapter 175, Loki joins the crew. Ragnarok, Dragon Ascent. A column of red light and a spear of green collided, brute force against blazing color, two ultimate attacks meeting with no grace, only devastation. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to change hue. Time itself held its breath. Then, boom, an unthinkable explosion swallowed the island. Soft Island trembled as if an entire god had stamped its foot. Rocks and soil were pulverized in an instant, turning to dust, as if a sudden thaw had swept them away. The sea withdrew brutally, exposing the damp seabed, and from the epicenter monstrous tsunamis rose like mountain ranges, racing out in every direction. "A tsunami is coming!" Chopper, eyes brimming, ran about the deck in a panic, his little hooves hammering the planks. "Don't be afraid. Watch me." Yamato slapped her chest and leapt from the bow. "Unserved ice fang!" A blast of freezing air fanned from her mouth, turning the surging waves to solid ice wherever it passed. The sea itself froze in seconds. A colossal mountain-high ice wall glinted into being in front of the Rayquaza. Chiffon screamed at the others, pale and urgent. Quick, full speed, get out of here. But human effort meant little against nature's wrath. Before the ships could turn, the sky-darkening wave crashed down like a judgmental hand. Wood splintered with a horrible scream. The fleet was torn to pieces in an instant. The clash had reshaped Soft Island. The surface had been gouged out for tens of meters, leaving a gaping, bowl-shaped crater in its wake. In the center of that crater, Kane stood, disheveled, torn clothes, dirt-smudged like a vagrant, but his eyes burned with exhilaration and satisfaction. He had won. Near him lay Loki, unconscious and bleeding, a discarded doll of a man. His blood had nearly soaked the ground. Only the faint rise and fall of his chest hinted he lived. Kane walked up slowly, one hand grabbing the nape of Loki's collar, the other reaching for the iron thunder that had fallen nearby, the giant's symbol of authority. The instant Kane's palm closed on the handle, the hammer screamed, a piercing trill, and countless blue arcs lashed out like electrified serpents, attempting to char the hand that dared touch it. Interesting. Did it inherit some Mjolnir-like restriction? Kane mused aloud. He didn't flinch. The lightning only made him smile. With a steady grip and a little force, he dragged the legendary warhammer, 10 times larger than his body, and Loki toward the sea. When they reached the shore, the Rayquaza broke through the ice and sailed over to them. The crew stared at the scarred battlefield, like a god had scooped a chunk from the earth and swallowed. "Incredible, Kane," came voices. "You're invincible." "Naturally. I am your captain." Kane smiled, then gave orders. "Bind him with sea stone chains." "Yes, Lord Kane!" Their gazes were almost worshipful. Lord Kane had felled such a foe. While the beast pirates wound layer after layer of sea stone around Loki, something happened. The man's eyelids twitched. Kane noticed and paused, surprised that the man's vitality endured. Ugh! Loki felt a tide of weakness and fought to open his eyes. His lids cracked and light cut through. He blinked and, to his dismay, saw a cluster of annoying faces peering down at him. Bandages? Where were his bandages? He began to sink back into darkness when a clear voice interrupted. "Kane, his eyes are—" Yamato pointed and stopped mid-sentence. "What? Ugly? Evil? Disgusting?" Loki braced for the usual revulsion. Instead, Yamato blinked, sincere and bright. "They're so handsome." "What?" Loki snapped his eyes open. He was not pleased. "What kind of eyes do you have? How could these cursed eyes possibly be called handsome?" Yamato looked puzzled at his shout, then repeated slowly, "But they really are." Loki gaped, stunned into silence. Nearby, Kane smirked quietly. Sometimes bluntness beat out a tsundere's walls. Reiju, measured and calm, added, "They're unique, but not ugly." Hiyori, softly admiring, said, "They're one of a kind. Super cool. I wish I had eyes like that." Bonnie flapped her hands, green with envy. "It's just the color and shape. Why all the fuss? I thought you were bandaged because you were blind." Ace shrugged. The crew chatted with curiosity, interest, or simple indifference. Loki had spent a lifetime branded by those heterochromatic slit pupils, the so-called eyes of the devil, and had been abandoned by his mother at birth and treated as a monster. He expected fear and hatred. He hadn't expected admiration, especially from enemies. The contrast knocked the wind out of him. "You idiots have no idea what horror these eyes bring," he snapped, voice bitter and tangled with a shame he wouldn't admit. He bristled at being affirmed by those he'd thought should loathe him. Kane was unruffled. "They're just eyes. If anything, those eyes explain why your mother abandoned you at birth." To Kane, Loki's eyes were a curiosity, a trait that in another time might have been idolized. "If this were my old world," Kane said wryly, "someone with eyes like that could make a fortune streaming." Loki recoiled in disbelief. "How do you know that?" Kane shrugged. "Because I know things. I know far more than you think." Loki's heart stuttered when Kane went on. "Your father, wise King Harold, his death wasn't an accident. It was the world government's doing, wasn't it?" Robin glanced at the prone Loki with a new intensity. Kane's insight hit truths even the giants had not known. Loki's mind raced. "Did Yaruru tell you? Did he regain his memory?" He and Yaruru had been the only witnesses to that day. If Yaruru could remember, the whole stain of patricide might be lifted. Kane watched him coolly. "Not yet, but I might be able to make him remember." Kane outlined the plan as if stating the weather. Yaruru's memory loss came from the sword lodged in his head. Remove the sword. Law's Op no Mi could do it. Failing that, they could add the cure fruit. Between the two, Kane refused to believe Yaru's memories were lost for good. Loki's defenses wavered. Kane pressed further. You weren't born in the wrong era. You were born exactly when you needed to be. The words yanked Loki back decades, back to a boy begging to join the Rock's pirates and being told he was too young. The memory burned. He looked at Kane, arrogant, unbridled, and sneered, You think you're Rocks? Rocks was stronger than you. No, I never wanted to be the second Rocks, Kane replied, spreading his arms as if to embrace the sky. I wanted to be Kane, only Kane. Sunlight framed him like a halo. Loki fell quiet, torn between hunger for the world-shattering revenge he had always chased and the uncertain offer in front of him. If this man could help him topple the world government and the celestial dragons, if this crew were the tide that could overturn everything, was it time to join? When Loki finally raised his head, the struggle was gone. His expression was cold, resolute. If you don't live up to the dream I want, I'll leave you without a second thought. Kane smiled, unshaken. Then it's a deal. The crew erupted in disbelief. They'd just recruited the man accused of killing the former king? Violet, practical as ever, blurted, Where on our ship would we even put him? He's 60, 70 meters tall. Even if he lies down, he'd span the ship. Kane's smile deepened. Hiyori can handle it. Me? Hiyori pointed to herself, surprised, then realized he meant her fire cloud technique. I can lift him with a flame cloud and take him off the island. Later, we can have Elbaf's shipwrights build him a proper vessel. Kane's arrangements were concise and decisive. They would get Loki away from the wreckage now. Later, the giants could construct a custom warship befitting his size and status. Before anyone could exhale, a thunderous roar split the air. Did you ask this old woman for permission? From the distance came the sound of a storm and a rumbling voice. A round, formidable elderly woman, 8 or 9 meters tall, riding a white cloud and tearing over the ocean with a ferocious scowl and an open mouth. 3 towering figures stood at her feet, radiating astounding presence. The Charlotte family had come in force after catching wind of the battle. The island, the sea, the new crevice in the earth, all held their breath as the new arrivals descended. Chapter 17, Linlin's Invitation. In the blink of an eye, the Charlotte family materialized before them. At the sight of Loki, bound in sea stone chains and looking like a small mountain, the ferocious glare on Charlotte Linlin's face melted into something as warm as spring sunlight. She was a master of sudden changes in expression. Mama, Loki, you look hurt. Let Auntie Linlin help. Her voice became syrupy with false concern, and there was no room to refuse in the way she said it. Napoleon, the bicorn hat perched on her head, obeyed unthinkingly. It leapt down, transformed into a massive sword midair, and rested in her palm. Battle lines were being drawn. At that moment, Kane stepped forward, putting himself between Loki and Charlotte Linlin. A faint, easy smile curved his lips. You're too late, he said. Loki's my partner now. He doesn't need your help. The grin on Linlin's face froze. Too late. Her mouth twitched. She forced a wary smile and tried one last ploy. Loki, tell Auntie Linlin, were you forced? Were you threatened? Speak up, and Auntie will stand up for you. She expected that after the beating Loki had just taken, her kindness would soften him, make him grateful and obedient. But Loki's reaction blew past her expectations. He turned his head with a look of contempt and barked to the nearby beast's pirates, who had been cowed by Mama's presence, to hurry and unlock his chains. He completely ignored Charlotte Linlin's solicitous tone. He might be reckless, but he wasn't stupid. He'd already chosen to come aboard Kane's ship. He had no reason to waver now. Charlotte Linlin's theatrics had no effect. Startled into motion, the beast's pirates snapped out of their haze and worked quickly to remove the sea stone cuffs. Linlin's face hardened, and a volcano of rage erupted inside her. How long had it been since anyone ignored her? Once freed, Loki hauled himself up, hefted his warhammer, and shouted at Kane with obvious relief and hunger. Let's be off. After that fight, I'm starved. I need a huge meal. Hungry? Linlin's eyes gleamed. Hunger was a vulnerability she could exploit. She pushed down her fury and pasted a bright smile on her enormous face. Since you've come all the way into Totoland, why doesn't Mama host you properly? Coincidentally, Mama is about to hold a grand tea party. Cracker, standing nearby, looked bewildered. The tea party wasn't until months from now. Why would Mama start one now? He glanced at Katakuri and Smoothie. Their calm faces showed no reaction, and Cracker swallowed his questions. Kane's crew exchanged uneasy looks. The tea party was the Big Mom Pirates' biggest annual event, their gala. Skipping it was one thing. Being invited by Big Mom and refusing was another entirely. The consequences for absence were unthinkable. But it was only the beginning of the year 1518 by the sea calendar. Why hold a tea party now? The crew glanced at one another, unsettled. Perhaps to head off those doubts, or to emphasize Loki's importance to her plan, Charlotte Linlin announced loudly, "Mama, hosting the Prince of Elbaf is as good a reason as any to hold a special early tea party." If she could bind herself to Loki, the giant prince, it would open the door to the giant race and their power. Everyone looked to Kane for his response. Even Loki looked toward Kane, waiting for his lead. That enraged Charlotte Linlin. Why? Why were these two, fresh from a fight to the death, so obedient to this brat? Why had she not received such respect when she was young? All she did was accidentally kill a few giants and raise a village. Did they hold that against her forever? She'd been there first. She'd met the giants first. Yet this scoundrel Kane had stolen the giant prince's friendship from her. He'd stolen her life. The more she thought, the darker her face grew. Her gaze sliced across Kane like a blade. "Mama won't hear no. You wouldn't reject Mama's kindness, would you?" Kane's voice was steady. "What if I say no? Do you want to fight?" Both he and Loki were battered and far from peak strength, but Kane couldn't show any sign of backing down. At his stance, Charlotte Linlin, to everyone's surprise, cooled her terrifying aura and smiled again. "Of course not. Kaido and I are as close as siblings. He owes Mama a great favor. Naturally, our families cooperate closely." Kane inwardly scoffed. Kaido had stolen the Azure Dragonberry, but Linlin was chalking it up as a favor. Still, he knew Kaido acknowledged some debt to Linlin. How great it was, only the heavens knew. This troublesome brat, she thought. Seeing Kane unmoved, she masked her fury with a smile. "Kane, may we speak privately?" "Of course." He nodded without emotion. "Watch him," the crew warned each other. Kane was hurt. If Linlin struck, it could be dangerous. Kane waved the worry away. "It's fine. Nothing will happen." As soon as they rose high enough that the others couldn't hear, Linlin dropped all pretense. "Brat, listen. I know you do business with that Tesoro. Mama can guarantee your trade access across every island in Totoland. The Big Mom Pirates will escort your shipments." Her tone turned cold as a blade. "But if you refuse, Mama will block your trade in Totoland and order all our affiliates to crush your business." Kane couldn't believe the audacity. Promise trade routes for nothing, then threaten a blockade? Still, his mind was clear. He spread his hands and feigned helpless sincerity. "Loki is my dearest friend and brother. I won't betray him for profit." Linlin tightened her grip on Napoleon, and the air grew heavy with menace. If she hadn't cared about her relationship with Loki, she would have struck already. Kane ignored the implied threat and said slowly, "You're going to have to pay more." Linlin gritted her teeth. "Erase Kaido's favor to me right now," she demanded. Kane barked a laugh. "Don't be ridiculous. I know exactly how much that so-called favor is worth. I want something real." "So what do you want?" She spat through clenched teeth. "Territory," Kane said, lifting 5 fingers. 5 islands, not uninhabited ones. Each must have at least 10,000 permanent residents. 5? Are you mad? Linlin recoiled. Totoland only had a little over 40 islands that size. Was he asking for an eighth of them? 1, she countered immediately, sticking out a finger. 1 island. You can't expect Mama to give away islands just because she hosts a tea party. 3, Kane said. That's my bottom line. Linlin hesitated, then ground her teeth and agreed. Territory could be seized later if lost. Missing Loki, she feared, might be a far greater loss. Until the tea party ends, she added, you must obey all of Mama's arrangements. Deal. Kane accepted before she could change her mind. A flash of triumph lit Linlin's face. Good. Mama will return and prepare the tea party. Without bothering with a proper farewell, she climbed onto Zeus and flew off, glaring balefully at Kane as she left. Remember your promise. By the time Kane landed, the Charlotte family had already vanished. Lord Kane, are you all right? Kozuki Hiyori rushed forward and examined him anxiously. Linlin's mood before she left had been terrifying. Beneath the forced smile, she'd looked ready to devour anyone who crossed her. Kane waved her concern away. "It's fine. Just a little bargaining with Mama." "A transaction?" Loki asked with a grin. "What price did you sell me for?" "A good one." Kane summarized the deal. 3 islands, Kaido's favor, and business arrangements. The companions couldn't believe it. Was Charlotte Linlin really that easy to buy off? Had she just handed over islands like that? To them, Mama's favors were everything. No one could oppose her. But now she'd ceded territory at the start of the year, and over islands with tens of thousands of people. Those weren't cheap, easy things to give. Smoothie and Cracker exchanged helpless looks. Katakuri, his face half hidden by his scarf, clenched his fists so tightly his knuckles showed. The pain in their chests was almost physical. Kane's face turned oddly serious. "You have to understand. She thinks she's gaining leverage with Prince Loki, but she doesn't know the situation in Elbaf has already changed. The throne's been taken. If she tries to use Loki's name, she'll only make things worse. Loki's past has shamed the giant race. Her attempt to curry favor will backfire." He let the truth sink in. Charlotte Linlin had spent a huge price to win nothing, maybe to her great chagrin. The 3 sweet commanders could only stand in silence, numbed by the thought of their mama being so badly outplayed. Chapter 177, Arrival at Cake Island. Totoland, also called Whole Cake Island, was a vast kingdom made up of the central Cake Island and 34 surrounding isles, each with its own theme. Dominating the first half of the New World, it could have been a fairy tale realm if one forgot who ruled it. All 35 islands boasted food-based motifs: Cheese Island, Biscuit Island, Candy Island, and so on. The air itself seemed sugared, a paradise for anyone who loved to eat. Like the best fairy tales, the place was full of living oddities, talking, thinking creations, and the bizarre architecture only added to Totoland's unique charm. After several days at sea, the Rayquaza finally reached the outer waters of Cake Island. In the distance, the cream-tiered buildings were visible, their frosting-like roofs gleaming. To show how important this meeting was, Katakuri, the Charlotte family's most composed and reliable face, had already brought several younger siblings to wait at the port. Kane was not surprised. Charlotte Linlin might be a laughingstock among the emperors, but the Charlotte family had one unbeatable advantage: intelligence. Their information network was probably the best of any pirate faction. They could even monitor the Marine's Den Mushi channels. The waters under the surface were watched too. Linlin had long ago secured a fishman unit by political marriage for that purpose. The ship eased into the dock. Before stepping ashore, Kane took in the scene of Cake Island itself, prosperous, lively, and overwhelmingly sweet. Buildings mimicked cakes in every shape, colorful and vivid. Even the breeze smelled of cream. "These houses look like they'd taste good." Loki rubbed his stomach and complained loudly. "I'm finally going to get a proper feast, right?" "I couldn't fill my belly on your crusty ship," another voice grumbled. Kane gave Loki a weary glare and ignored him. Strong people had astonishing appetites. Loki, with ancient giant blood, could eat like no one else. If he were allowed to gorge, the Rayquaza's stores might be gone in 2 days. They disembarked in order. Katakuri stepped forward first to greet them, tall, composed, respectful without being servile. "Welcome to Totoland," he said evenly. "Please take the carriage." Parked by the pier was an ornate carriage 10 meters tall, drawn by 4 splendid white horses. Kane glanced at it and easily saw the game. He smiled faintly. "Is that the only carriage you? Doesn't look big enough for our giant friend." This was a small test, or a petty provocation, from Charlotte Linlin. In her territory, building a carriage to accommodate a giant could have been done in days. Leaving Loki to trudge on foot, forced into a lesser position, would have irritated him without achieving much. Kane recognized the slight and declined with a casual wave. "We'll walk. It'll let us see Cake Island properly." Katakuri didn't object. He turned and personally escorted them toward the castle. Along the way, Chiffon, who had temporarily lost her post because of Kane's arrival, acted as tour guide, explaining the island's sights. Kane suddenly realized something. Loki had fallen silent. Moments ago, he'd been loudly proclaiming his hunger. Now he kept his mouth clamped shut, his gaze occasionally sliding toward Chiffon and flicking away, almost as if burned. He looked like a bashful youth in love. Kane stifled a laugh. Loki had indeed been struck by Chiffon at first sight, and who could blame him? Chiffon was kind, brave, and resolute, a good match for anyone. Kane shook his head and turned his attention back to the streets. Cake Island was bustling. Dessert shops lined both sides of the road, and residents strolled about with genuine, relaxed smiles. It felt like a secluded paradise. Yamato's eyes darted from one stranger to another. "Kane, look, I've never seen so many different races." "Mother's dream is to make a utopia where all races can live together equally," Chiffon said. Tato Land is where she's making that dream real. In many ways, that was true. There were no wars or pirate raids here. Food and drink were abundant, and even stones on the roadside could be eaten if you wanted. People couldn't starve on Cake Island. The ruling Charlotte family wasn't exactly tyrannical. They protected lives and property and maintained order. Of course, peace came at a cost. Residents surrendered 2 months of their lifespan each year as a protection fee. Much of that life energy was used to create homies soldiers that kept Tato Land secure, taking from the people to keep the people safe, some would say. And then there were Linlin's occasional hunger outbreaks, but with steady provisions, such episodes were rare and usually contained. Compared to the outside world, Tato Land was one of the best places an ordinary person could live. Still, Linlin had regrets. 3 races remained uncollected: the Giant Race, the Lunarian, King's Race, and another unknown. Some guessed the Buccaneer Race, but Kane thought otherwise. The pattern of races Tato Land had attracted so far were single races rather than hybrids. The Buccaneers didn't fit that pattern. They passed through a fantastical grove, and a magnificent castle rose up, layers upon layers like a towering cake. It was heavily guarded. Chess-like soldiers marched and patrolled. Those were Tato Land's basic forces, used for daily order and as fodder in battle. They did not enter the castle, though. It was plainly too small for a 60 to 70-meter giant like Loki. Just then a figure floated out of the gate, a girl with a blown-up balloon-like outfit and a blowgun slung on her back. Her eyes brightened when she saw Katakuri, and she floated over. "Katakuri, you're here." "Flampe," Katakuri acknowledged. "Why are you on Cake Island? I thought you were stationed on Honey Island." "I brought honey for Mama's tea party." Flamp puffed up, proud as could be, clearly wanting praise. "Good." Katakuri's voice was patient and approving. Flampe beamed, convinced she'd advanced in the competition to be Katakuri's favorite sister. Then she noticed Loki. His colossal body drew her eyes up from his feet until, because his bandages had been torn, she met his unusual yellow vertical pupils. "Ah, monster! Katakuri, protect me!" Flamp screamed and dove behind her brother. Loki snorted in disdain. Kane's expression cooled. "Katakuri, control your sister." Katakuri's grip tightened on his trident, Mogura, and his arm flexed. "You don't need to worry about it," he said without stepping back. Flamp, emboldened by Katakuri's posture, poked her head out and made a mocking face at Kane and Loki. Kane didn't move. A barely perceptible pulse of force, an invisible psychic shock, hit Flampe like a thrown stone. She went rigid, eyes rolling, mouth falling open, and collapsed, unconscious. "Kane!" Katakuri lunged, Mogura springing free and aimed straight at him. "Do you want war with the Charlotte family?" Kane met his glare without flinching. "You're the one trying to provoke it." As tensions reached a breaking point, a loud, childlike laugh rang from inside the castle gate. "Mama! Mama! Welcome!" Charlotte Linlin strode out, flanked by a small, round, chef-like man. Her gaze swept the scene, paused on the fainted Flamp, and landed on Katakuri with displeasure. "Katakuri, put your weapon away." If she hadn't arrived, the tea party might have been ruined. Katakuri reluctantly withdrew Mogura. It retracted into his arm. Seeing her son obey, Charlotte's expression softened enough to wear a constrained smile. She turned to Kane and forced cheerfully, "Mama's happy you're here. Don't let a little thing ruin the friendship between our families." Kane shrugged. The tension faded. Charlotte personally led them to a huge tent beside the castle, a temporary residence prepared especially for Loki. Inside it was cavernous and luxuriously furnished. Thick velvet carpets, gilded giant-sized furniture, and ornate tableware. She had clearly gone to great effort to please him. There were also careful details. Kane spotted row upon row of mirrors. They covered nearly every corner, reflections ready from any angle. If he hadn't known the Charlotte family could have a mirror fruit user, he might have been trapped by such a setup. Ace, Zoro, Sanji, Kane said without hesitation, directly in front of Charlotte. Take down every mirror and throw them out. Understood. The three complied without asking, strange looks on their faces, but obedient. Charlotte's smile tightened for a moment at that, then she relaxed and laughed lightly. The grand tea party begins tomorrow. Rest here tonight. She turned to Loki and added, with a smile layered in ulterior motives, if you'd like to explore Cake Island, my daughter Chiffon can be your guide. Loki, still fumbling inwardly, managed, Cake Island has many unique things. I'd like to see them. Charlotte's grin grew full of pleasure. Her intelligence had been right. Loki was enamored with Chiffon. She called Chiffon over. The smile she showed then was a new kind of benevolent that made Chiffon shiver. Chiffon, my good daughter, Charlotte said. It's time you contributed to the family. Her tone was gentle but absolute. I want you to guide Prince Loki, fulfill his needs, use your kindness, your wit, do whatever it takes to capture his heart. Charlotte's threat was unspoken but unmistakable. Her eyes turned cold. Chiffon's heart sank. What could she do? Even Katakuri could not defy Mama. She swallowed the fear, took a steadying breath, and bowed. I understand, Mama. I will do my best. Very good, Charlotte crooned, affectionate. She reached out and ruffled Chiffon's pink hair. A rare, intimate gesture she did not make toward most of her grown children. But instead of comfort, the touch left Chiffon feeling chilled. She knew privilege under Mama's favor could become a harsher burden later. With resolve as grim as going to her death, Chiffon composed a flawless smile and stepped forward. Prince Loki, please follow me. I'll show you around Cake Island. Okay, Loki stammered. In his own confusion, he didn't notice anything odd about Chiffon's expression. And so the two of them left the tent, each carrying very different thoughts. Chapter 178, The Tea Party begins. After Loki's hulking silhouette slipped out of the tent, Kozuki Hiyori stepped closer to Calamity Kane, her brows knitting in worry. In a low voice she asked, Calamity Kane, didn't Loki seem a bit off just now? Calamity Kane broke into a laugh. Can't you tell? Loki's fallen in love. Eh? A chorus of incredulous gasps filled the tent. Loki and Chiffon? The size difference made the match look absurd, like pairing a mountain with a cottage. Could they even have kids? How short-sighted, came a scoff from Eneru, who disliked Loki. Calamity Kane waved a hand. Don't be rude. Love doesn't care about race or size. It's a powerful thing. Ace leaned forward, curious. By the way, Kane, what was with those mirrors earlier? Calamity Kane answered casually. The Charlotte family has a berry fruit user who can slip through mirrors and spy on the outside world. What? The others' faces turned sour, especially the women. Knowing someone could watch your every move is unnerving. Kane, however, seemed composed. I called them out and warned them. They'll be more careful. Still, everyone should watch what they say. Information gathering could be ruthless. He'd do the same. Maybe his warning had worked, or maybe Mama's attention was entirely on wooing Loki. In any case, for the rest of the day, only the homies' servants delivered extravagant meals. No other Charlotte family members came to bother them. With spare time on his hands, Calamity Kane dragged Eneru along to practice Conqueror's Haki, which Eneru had only recently awakened. Ace, Zoro, and Sanji, each with the potential for Conqueror's Haki, were roped into the session as well. Kane's Haki class was back in session. To truly awaken and master Conqueror's Haki, the method is simple, he said, smiling faintly. At that smile, a warning bell went off in the four men's minds. Kane's tone held intent. You must feel it firsthand, break through under extreme pressure. Before he finished, his eyes narrowed and a tangible, overwhelming aura erupted, Conqueror's Haki like a tsunami, crushing down on the four. Their bodies trembled as if they were lone boats in a storm, ready to be swallowed. Sweat beaded and rolled down their temples, muscles twitched under the suffocating pressure. Teeth gritted, they clung to their will. Under that weight, an imperceptible seed of power began to take root deep in their minds. Night fell. Calamity Kane dragged the four into the tent, exhausted as if run through. The training had been brutal but effective. Eneru could now activate Conqueror's Haki to resist Kane's pressure. Ace, Zoro, and Sanji all showed signs of awakening. Just as Kane settled them, the tent flap flew open. Loki pushed his massive body in, flushed and radiating excitement. Doraga! Ah! Chiffon accepted my proposal. He announced it loudly. Elsewhere in the castle's main hall, Chiffon knelt before Mama. Loki proposed to me, she reported with forced respect, aware that Mama watched every gesture. Linlin smiled brightly, not in surprise, and she didn't ask Chiffon's opinion. Instead, she turned to her favored son. Katakuri, what do you think about having Loki and Chiffon marry at tomorrow's tea party? Loki's feelings for Chiffon had exceeded Linlin's expectations. She wanted to turn this tea party into a wedding right away. Katakuri didn't answer immediately. He glanced at Chiffon, who wore a brittle smile. In a low voice, he said, "It's up to Mama." He knew the question was rhetorical. "Then do it. I want this tea party to be the greatest wedding." Linlin waved her hand, unconcerned about time, and ordered the preparations. "Yes, Mama." Katakuri nodded and left. "Go. This old woman can't wait to tell that scoundrel Calamity Kane." Chiffon forced a smile as she followed orders out of the main hall. Once she was out of Mama's sight, that smile vanished. She had made a decision. She would elope. She might like Loki, but she refused to enter a loveless marriage. As she planned her escape, a tall figure stepped around a corner. Katakuri ni-san," Chiffon stammered. "Aren't you busy with the wedding? What are you doing here?" Katakuri didn't answer at first. He simply stared. Under his gaze, which seemed to look through to the heart, Chiffon went pale. After a long moment, he spoke. "Sometimes the most dangerous place is the safest." Without waiting for a reply, he turned and walked away. Chiffon watched his retreat, her expression conflicted, and then nodded to herself. The next afternoon, the tea party began. Despite the rushed preparations demanded by Linlin, the feast, part tea party, part wedding, was lavish and grand. To accommodate the groom's enormous frame, the venue was moved from the castle rooftop to a broader area outside. Loki, usually wild and unbridled, now carried himself with an odd reserve, no visible shyness, but something lighter, like the spirit of a 19-year-old human trapped in a 57-year-old giant's body. Amid laughter and teasing, the group arrived at the venue. The grounds were festooned with red banners and buzzing with guests. The Charlotte family's tea party was both a show of loyalty and a social goldmine, an opportunity to cross paths with powerful, rarely seen figures. Calamity Kane took in the crowd. Umit, the Sea King who dominated shipping. Gibberson, the hidden master who controlled underworld supply hubs. Picro, the Soul Reaper who monopolized funerary services and ran covert assassin networks. And of course, Morgans, the Birdman journalist, was bounding around snapping pictures. Calamity Kane wondered how Linlin had gotten so many people to Cake Island on such short notice. "Mr. Calamity Kane." With his journalist's nose, Morgan spotted Kane like a seagull spotting fries and practically dove into greeting. At his cry, the chattering died down. All eyes turned to Kane and his crew. In a moment, the crowd surged forward like a tide. Umit, not far off, snorted and turned away, swirling amber wine in his glass. Sensing the chill from him, Kane glanced over and recognized the petty Sea Lord immediately. Morgans, always eager for gossip, leaned closer to Kane and whispered with glee, "Your beast's logistics has forcibly taken a lot of lucrative business from his shipping." Umit's shipping had once been flush with berries, but since the beast pirates recruited fishmen and built the efficient beast's logistics, they'd carved out a huge slice of the transport market. Two logistics companies stood before customers, one backed by a pirate emperor who ruled the New World, the other by a self-styled underworld emperor. In that world, strength was the best credential. Kane's Beast Logistics had also insisted on keeping to legitimate trade and arms transport, refusing to wade into slave trading and illicit goods. Otherwise, some of the so-called underworld emperors might not be so secure. Morgans shifted topics, eyes bright. "Kane, can I get an exclusive? People say your beast's pirates might use this wedding to form an alliance with the Charlotte family." Marriages to bind interests were Linlin's favorite strategy. Many crews had been folded in that way. Kane just shook his head. "Loki getting married does not equal our two families forming an alliance." Morgans flapped his wings in theatrical disappointment, but perked up at the tidbit that the Curse Prince Loki bore a 2.6 billion berry bounty and had joined the Beast's pirates. That alone was headline material. A soft, delicate voice drifted over. "How remarkable, Calamity Kane." Stussy glided by in an elegant white dress, a perfect social smile on her face. The Curse Prince's bounty is 2.6 billion. Recruiting him makes the Beast's pirates even deadlier. As Linlin's favored ally, she had to be on the guest list. This will spread far and wide, she added, coyly hiding her mouth with a folding fan. Kane returned her smile with measured calm. If he had abandoned recruiting Loki out of fear of government attention, he might as well have stayed ruling a single province in Wano. After exchanging pleasantries with Stussy, Kane spotted an old acquaintance lurking at the crowd's edge, a flamboyant flamingo. Mingo, long time no see, caught. Doflamingo switched from skulking to an extravagant grin. Foo, my brother Calamity Kane, forgive me, I was tied up with business. Kane's smile had a hint of meaning. Receiving an invitation signaled status, and Doflamingo replied, business, one always needs more friends and wider connections. Doflamingo's grin looked practiced. This was his first tea party. In years past, he hadn't built a close enough relationship with the Charlotte family to be invited. Still, one rule of the tea party was clear. Absence was punished. He'd swallowed his pride and come. Kane's eyes flicked to Umit, standing stone-faced nearby, and understood the relationship. Doflamingo's empire reached into the darker corners Umit's shipping channels could navigate. Underworld auctions, the slave trade, smuggling forbidden goods. Doflamingo's old ties as a former celestial dragon and Shichibukai privileges let him dabble in areas others feared, and Umit's global logistics filled the gaps. Cooperation had been inevitable. Good luck, Kane said and drifted off into the crowd, leaving the two to stare at each other with concern. Mingo, do you think he suspected? Umit asked, brow knotted. Their transaction had skirted a line, one tied to the destiny knot. Kane had stitched for the Beast's pirates and their partners. Doflamingo hissed under his breath, are you an idiot? The deal just started. How could he know? Yet even as he said it, a chill ran down his spine. Kane's inscrutable demeanor unnerved him. Still, Doflamingo's calculation warmed at the thought of the promised returns. Fortune favored the bold, and to reclaim the Holy Land, he would risk everything. He cast a wary look at Umit. If not for the man's extensive secret routes, Doflamingo would happily do without him. But he couldn't. Some alliances were unavoidable. While Doflamingo and Umit were lost in their own thoughts, Kane found Violet and listened as she reported quietly, they intend to target the Fishman race. The Celestial Dragons have promised Doflamingo a quota to return to the Holy Land. With Violet's glare fruit ability to peer into hearts, the private schemes of Doflamingo and Umit had been laid bare. Kane's face was composed, but a cold, dangerous light flashed in his eyes. Their luck's not looking good. Ever since he'd established steady cooperation with Fishman Island, the Beast Pirates' deterrence had driven down the number of merfolk captured and sold. The price for merfolk slaves shot up, no problem for the Celestial Dragons, who would pay any sum to keep up appearances, but you have to have stock to sell. Merfolk slaves, already scarce, had become a hard currency of status in Mary Geoise, a living, crying luxury. Some Celestial Dragons had a bright idea: bypass middlemen and back a dedicated slave hunting team to supply them directly. Doflamingo, with both motive and means, was the perfect candidate. Exchange a Holy Land quota for a steady stream of prime merfolk, profitable, obvious, and obscene. Kane, should we act? Violet ground her silver teeth. She despised Doflamingo for the slavery he'd inflicted on her people. Kane shook his head. Not yet. Let him move. To catch a thief, you need proof. Doflamingo had been arming the Beast's pirates for years. He deserved whatever latitude a ruling power would give him. To topple him required a plausible pretext. The Beast's pirates were more than brigands. They were a force dominating a region and gunning for supremacy. Reputation mattered. Still, Doflamingo's current betrayals provided a golden excuse. Kane only needed to watch and prepare. Without warning, a rain of desserts fell from the sky. Cakes, puddings, and cookies, all charmingly shaped and impossibly colorful, drifted down before the guests. Please eat me, crooned a moose cake as it bobbed toward Kane. He frowned. The anthropomorphic treats always gave him the unnerving sense that they were trying to eat people, not the other way around. He tossed the smiling cake back into the sky. Others, used to Big Mom's tea parties, laughed and grabbed their favorites without a second thought. Charlotte Linland delighted in watching her guests gorge on Cake Island's creations. Each bite confirmed her warped belief that anyone who loves sweets is one of us. Watching the revelers devour perpetually grinning desserts, Kane felt as if he had stepped into a madman's diary. A chill crawled up his spine. "Mama, Mama, I'm so glad you all love my sweets." Charlotte Linland made her entrance, puffed into a pink dress like a grotesque queen, trailed by her brood. "Enjoy everything we have prepared today." Cheers rang out, smiles were forced and bright, seats were taken. Kane was led to the main place beside Big Mom. Loki, the groom, had a specially enormous chair. The head chef, Longbread, led a procession of cooks rolling in a towering cream cake, over 20 meters tall. Its layers piped into a gorgeous confection whose sweet aroma seemed to press into everyone's nostrils. Longbread bowed. "This wedding cake was made with Chiffon's help. She worked through the night. It's her specialty, chiffon cake." "Mama, you did well. This pleases me." Big Mom's eyes lit up, a droplet of saliva at the corner of her mouth. "So beautiful." "Magnificent," the guests gushed at cue, lifting the mood to a fever pitch. Then the most important person in Charlotte Linland's life was announced. A king's soldier, flanked by 2 queen soldiers, walked solemnly from the castle and carried a heavily ornamented treasure box. The crowd fell silent, as if a mute button had been pressed. The box was treated like a holy relic. It was placed before Charlotte Linland. "Kane," she said, turning to him with boastful pride, "I want to introduce you properly to our mother, Mother Carmel." She reached to open the box. A faint red flash crossed Kane's eyes and a small, amused smile tugged at his mouth. He was curious. Katakuri's face tightened as he tried to stop it. Wait, too late. The lid lifted, and its contents were revealed to Charlotte Linland. Her smile froze. Mother's photograph. Who? Who did this? Shock and disbelief shattered her composure. Her looming calm collapsed. Violent, chaotic Haoshoku haki began to seethe and expand out of her like a volcano. As if fate demanded more drama, the wedding cake began to swell, and then, with a thunderous roar, exploded. Boom! The cake detonated into fragments and cream, a sky-high blaze reducing it to ruin. Yamato and her companions lamented the loss of what had surely been an exquisite dessert. But Charlotte Linland had already shifted into full fury. Her grief over Mother Carmel's photograph, compounded by the loss of her wedding cake, drove her over the edge. "Mother, the cake!" A single tear fell. Then she opened her blood-red mouth and released a scream that was more demonic wail than human sound. It was laced with the full force of her Haoshoku haki. A shockwave of sound and haki swept the venue. Guests toppled, unconscious, in droves. Many of Big Mom's children were felled despite their attempts to flee. Kane's companions, Reiju, Violet, Bonnie, and Chopper, groaned and collapsed under the onslaught. Ace, Zoro, and Sanji fought with everything in them to stay standing. "Damn it! We're not going down to some emperor's yell," the 3 roared together. Under immense pressure, the dormant seeds of their conqueror's haki erupted. Boom! Boom! 3 bursts of nascent but indomitable haki pushed back against Big Mom's soul voice. Kane, caught at the center of the chaos, remained unnervingly calm. He watched Ace, Zoro, and Sanji's struggling wills awaken with a slight nod, as if the shrieking pirate emperor beside him didn't exist. Around the main table, only a few stood firm. Katakuri had anticipated the danger and retreated. He watched from a distance. After 10 seconds or so, perhaps from emotional exhaustion and the strain of unleashing so much power, Charlotte Linland's massive body swayed. Her knees hit the floor with a thud, and blood seeped where she landed. Kane noted that detail. Could Big Mom's so-called steel balloon body be more than raw strength? Could it be a defensive state maintained by Haoshoku haki, one that ruptured when she overused it? The idea was audacious. Conqueror's haki used defensively, but not impossible. If observation haki had special variants, why not Haoshoku? The thought flashed through his mind, even as Charlotte Linland, finally quieting, saw the only person at her side who hadn't flinched. Her expression snapped to fury. Kane? Rage, grief, and obsession blurred her reasoning. She pointed at him. You ruined my tea party. You destroyed Sister's photograph. I knew it. You don't want Loki to be my son-in-law." Whoa. Kane leaned back unafraid, his face a calm, mocking smile. "Charlotte Linland, is there something wrong with your head?" he finished flatly. The surviving guests who had crawled back to their feet froze. Did he just insult Charlotte Linlin, a Yonko? Morgan's eyes glittered. The newsman could barely contain his delight. He raised his den mushi and hammered the shutter. Kane didn't stop. You don't think I'm sitting here calmly because I'm afraid of you, do you? If Loki didn't genuinely like Chiffon, do you think I'd be here playing house with you? Playing house? Charlotte Linlin's face contorted. Are you saying my tea party is playing house? If your ears don't work, I'll say it again. Kane spoke each word clearly. Your tea party is just playing house. He gestured at the stunned guests around them, voice edged with sarcasm. Do you really think these people came for Cake Island sweets? Panic rippled through the crowd. No, some shouted their love for Cake Island was genuine. They had traveled thousands of miles for a single bite. They weren't there for favors or loyalty. Quick-witted guests rushed to protest and protect their reputations. As Charlotte Linlin's rage recalibrated, a royal soldier burst in, breathless and terrified. No good. The bride is gone. What did you say? Big Mom's face snapped toward the soldier, killing intent suffocating him. Mama, please calm down. Maybe Chiffon had something urgent, needs to touch up her makeup or use the restroom. Cream Minister Charlotte Opera tried to soothe her. Charlotte Linlin's retort was a cold, cruel soul pocus. Life or bride? No, Mama, Opera cried. Katakuri, who could glimpse the future, pleaded, but it was too late. Opera's legs betrayed him. Fear rooted him to the spot. Big Mom's massive hand, overflowing with aura, reached out. Before Opera's plea could finish, a translucent soul was torn from his body. His eyes rolled back, and his husk of a body collapsed like a broken puppet. Kane watched and shook his head. Compared to Big Mom, Kaido looked almost paternal. Kaido had always threatened and punished Yamato, but he had never truly intended to kill her. He even indulged her with the title Young Master at times. Big Mom's brutality was stark. Kane turned from the frenzy to Loki, who looked hollowed out by the evening's turn. Hey, Loki, we should go. Seems your bride isn't ready to enter the halls of marriage yet. Loki stared at him, cold reality hitting like a bucket of water. He remembered Chiffon's strange reaction when he'd proposed yesterday. He'd thought her surprise was simply surprise. Now he understood it had been fear. Kane, tell me, why did she agree then? His voice was edged with disappointment. Kane scowled. She didn't have a real choice. Charlotte Linlin must have issued a death order. Loki shoved his hand through his hair. This is your fault, too. How could you go after a girl like that? You barely knew her. You proposed after only a few meetings. Who wouldn't be scared? So what should I do? Loki asked. He had finally met someone who made his heart race. He didn't want to give up. Kane puffed his chest with mock confidence. Don't worry. When it comes to relationships, I know a few tricks. I'll teach you. Loki looked at the cadre of young women who always seemed to orbit Kane and nodded sincerely. For the first time that night, a quiet sense of belonging to the Rayquaza eased into him. The two men chatted and laughed as they turned to leave the chaotic venue. They had only gone a few steps when Charlotte Linlin's massive form blocked their path like an immovable mountain. In her arms, she held a woman in a spotless white wedding gown, an image identical to Chiffon. Hey, Loki, the bride. I found the bride for you. She screamed it, eyes fixed on Loki with the last shred of a twisted hope. The bride smiled brightly and obligingly. Let's go back and finish the wedding. Loki only cast a cold, sidelong glance, an undisguised sneer curling his lips. She isn't Chiffon at all, not even close. Lola, Chiffon's twin, forced a smile beneath her mother's hungry glare and stammered. How can that be? I am Chiffon. Chich, I said you're different, so you're different. Do you take me for an idiot? Loki waved a hand as if brushing away a fly, then added insult to injury. With a mother like you, it's no wonder Chiffon ran away. The last fragile hope for the political marriage shattered. The idea that any reconciliation with the giant race might now be impossible snapped something in Charlotte Linlin's mind. Her eyes clouded and bloodshot, her voice dropped into an abyssal roar. If you won't marry into this family, if you all betray me, then all of you can just die. Prometheus. Mama, I'm here, a fawning, excited voice answered instantly. A small sun flared into being in Charlotte Linlin's enormous palm. Flames erupted. The previously amiable face of fire became vicious and sinister. Heavenly fire. Charlotte Linlin hurled the fireball with brutal force. It expanded mid-flight into a sphere 20 meters across, scorching the air as it flew. That's why not even dogs would eat the Maramara no Mi. Kane watched without flinching, calm as ever. You want to fight our captain? You'll have to get past me first. Loki stepped forward without hesitation, his mountain-sized form shielding Kane. The giant fireball slammed into him and swallowed him whole. A ripple of gasps ran through the crowd, but after only a few seconds, Prometheus's earlier pride dissolved into panicked shrieks. Mama, something's wrong. I can't burn him. My flame is draining too. It felt as if the flames themselves were not hurting the giant, but helping him. His power was stealing theirs. That's cozy. Loki's lazy voice resounded from inside the inferno. A huge arm, wrapped in burning fire yet unharmed, stretched out from the blaze. In his palm, he grasped a ball of flame and, with a sharp yank, squeezed it into shape. The raging fire compressed obediently into a single brutal flame spear. Taste your own power. Loki roared and hurled the spear at its owner. Mythical zone in Surtur form, how could he fear mere flames? The spear met Charlotte Linlin's palm and was slapped aside. Zeus! Mama, I'm here! Zeus, circling overhead, moved instantly and hovered above Kane and Loki. The cloud shifted from pure white to roiling thundercloud. Lightning danced within it. Thunder! Charlotte Linlin flicked a command. A colossal pillar of lightning, several meters across and bristling with destructive power, crashed down toward Kane. It was the kind of strike that could rip through a warship, yet Kane remained unruffled, hands in his pockets, eyes steady. He simply called a name. Eneru. As the lightning column descended, a blur of movement slipped between it and Kane. Charlotte Linlin's eyes widened in disbelief. Her envisioned scene of the enemy being charred to coal never happened. The instant Zeus's lightning touched the figure, it was absorbed utterly, like rivers pouring into the sea. There was no explosion, no scattering arcs, not even a single stray spark. Zeus thinned and shrank, his power sapped, reverting to an ordinary white cloud with a dejected burp. Eneru landed lightly and even burped, as if he'd just enjoyed a feast. He had absorbed Zeus's lightning, faint electric light coiled around him, his body swelling slightly, his aura amplified. Prometheus and Zeus, having had their attacks turned aside, crept back to Charlotte Linlin's side, timid and cowed. Mama, what do we do now? Kane, Loki, and Eneru stood composed and unshaken. Seeing them so calm, Charlotte Linlin, raised by craving sickness and fury, grew even more unhinged. She raised Napoleon, which transformed into a gargantuan blade in her grip. Elbaf's spear, prestige nation, a titanic sword shockwave, a roaring monstrosity, smashed down toward the three of them. Seriously, has she stopped understanding human words? Kane muttered, annoyed. He casually lifted his right fist. It went pitch black. Black and red Haoshoku arcs crackled around it like furious thunder serpents, radiating a killing aura. He swung as if at nothing. Boom! The fist collided with the sword shockwave. The impact detonated with a blast that rocked the entire venue. A physical tsunami of force tore outward, hurling debris and choking the crowd with dust and flying rubble. When the gale subsided, guests in the distance could barely stand, lungs burning. The battleground looked as if a meteor had struck. An immense crater and utter devastation marked where the blows had met. Only Kane and Charlotte Linlin still stood at the center. A spray of gravel burst, and Kane vanished. The next moment, he appeared like a specter right before the giant's face. Charlotte Linlin's chaotic mind didn't even register him. A pitch-black hand wrapped in thick black and red lightning curled into a claw and lashed out. That's enough, you damned old hag. The hand clamped around Charlotte Linlin's face. Kane's arm bulged with muscle, and an irresistible force surged through him. Even 8 meters tall and mountain-heavy, Charlotte Linlin became a weightless rag doll. Kane slammed her into the ground with savage strength. Crash! The earth fractured, dust and smoke shot skyward. And it wasn't over. Black and red lightning, deeper and more violent than before, exploded outward from Kane, sweeping the battlefield like countless thunderdrakes. Bolts struck the fallen giant with deafening concussions, ripping craters out of the ground and throwing up explosions of energy. The tremor of that power reached distant guests, who felt their knees go weak and instinctively dropped to their knees in submission. He's actually this strong. Pale and swallowing hard, the crowd realized the truth. Calamity Kane, by the power on display, had the qualifications to stand for the title of Pirate Emperor. After a long moment, the destructive lightning ebbed. An arrogant figure still stood at the center, calm and unbowed. It was as if the world-shattering assault had been no more than a flick of his wrist. At his feet, Charlotte Linlin lay knocked out, unconscious but not gravely hurt. The guests were stunned into silence. One of the four emperors, defeated in an instant? From first strike to finish, it hadn't even taken the time for a meal. "I'm absolutely ecstatic," Morgans practically squealed. He fumbled with two camera den mushi at once, unable to decide which angle to record first. Kane looked down at the fallen emperor, slightly disheveled but not badly harmed, and his expression grew troubled. There are mistaken names, but no mistaken nicknames. Iron Balloon was deserved. Until Charlotte Linlin's Conqueror's Haki was fully exhausted, even a blow like Kane's could only keep her down briefly. To actually draw blood or break skin would be a different achievement. That would mean his Conqueror's Haki was truly formidable. In gaming terms, the Iron Balloon was like a massive fixed damage reduction or super strong armor. From what he'd just seen, Kane thought there were only 3 ways to completely beat Charlotte Linlin: exhaust her until she had nothing left, use attack power that utterly overwhelmed that defensive limit, or use true damage techniques akin to an awakened Opie-Ope no Mi. In truth, he'd only put her down quickly by taking advantage of her craving sickness, meltdown, and disoriented state. Otherwise, a winner couldn't be decided without a drawn-out fight. "Mama!" Katakuri roared as he lunged toward the center. "Hey, your opponent is me!" Yamato flashed into position and cut him off, eyes bright with battle lust. "Get out of my way!" Katakuri's panic flared. His right arm swelled and shifted fluidly into a giant spiked mochi club. Armament Haki coated it like a tide, glinting cold and metallic. Slicing, dicing mochi. He spun the arm like a heavy flail and sent it roaring toward Yamato. "Heh! Bring it on!" Yamato grinned, delighted. She planted both hands on her spiked club and met the spinning behemoth head-on with Thunder Bagua. The mochi club and spiked club met in a deafening crash. The ground beneath them shattered and collapsed, dust choking the air. The top fighters' clash sounded like a clarion call for all-out war. Elsewhere, Kuma and others were locked in battle with Charlotte family children, and the scene dissolved into full-scale pandemonium. "Hey, Kane." Loki looked over the chaos, eager. "Should we seize the moment and wipe them out?" He eyed annihilating the Charlotte family as the first step in a plan to tear down the world. Killing a 4 Emperor's commander would be a fine prize. "Do you think I'm a born psychopath?" Kane shook his head. "Now is not the time." Destroying the Charlotte family was on his long-term list, but not now. Raising them would leave Todo Land in disarray, handing the territory over to other opportunistic pirate crews. Their visit had been a spur-of-the-moment decision. The Beast's pirates weren't prepared to hold such a huge and complex domain smoothly. Let Charlotte Linlin remain the queen of Todo Land a while longer. "Stop!" Kane's voice rang, clear and commanding across the venue. Fighters on both sides paused mid-motion. Charlotte Kaido, the strawman swordsman in a pumpkin-shaped helmet, snarled reflexively, "Who are you to give orders to us, Charlottes?" Before he could finish, Kane's gaze went ice-cold. A concentrated surge of Conqueror's Haki struck the insolent swordsman like a hammer. He choked, his vision black, and before he could raise a defense, his eyes rolled back, his weapon clattered, and he fell backward, stiff and unconscious. The venue dropped into a stunned silence. Everyone had just seen Kane put down a family executive with nothing but a look, without moving an inch. Anger and grief were swallowed. The Charlotte family's children, no matter how furious, were frozen by the sheer gulf of power. Almost all of them stopped dead, forced to suppress their emotions. They looked up at Kane with a mixture of fear, unwillingness, and a grudging reverence, watching the man who seemed to command everything, waiting to see what he would say next. Calamity Kane left. Under the stunned eyes of the guests and the tangled looks of reluctance, anger, and fear on the faces of the Charlotte family children, he calmly boarded his ship and sailed away, carrying with him the spoils of the visit, the ownership of 5 islands. The armistice went off without a hitch. As the acting head of the Charlotte family, Katakuri accepted Calamity Kane's terms with almost no negotiation. On these seas where strength rules, the fall of Charlotte Linlin, the family's strongest fighter, amounted to the family's complete defeat. Not a single executive dared to object to such a humiliating agreement. If anything, a faint sense of relief stirred among them. Giving up 5 islands in return for Calamity Kane ceasing hostilities felt like a bargain. The Rayquaza slid out of port, cutting through the water and leaving that sweet, wondrous country behind. As Cake Island's silhouette shrank on the horizon, Calamity Kane glanced toward the galley with a knowing smile. "Sanji, bring our guest out. She's hiding in the storeroom." Sanji, who'd been struggling with a poneglyph, blinked, then hurried to the kitchen. He soon reappeared, leading a pink-haired woman in a floral dress. "Chiffon!" Loki, lounging on a flame cloud, widened his eyes in disbelief. He hadn't expected to see her again, let alone aboard this ship. Chiffon didn't look at Calamity Kane at first. She turned to Loki and bowed deeply, her face full of apology. "I'm sorry, Lord Loki. I couldn't accept that forced marriage contract." Then she turned to Calamity Kane, firming her resolve, dropped to her knees on the deck, and pressed her forehead to the wood. "Lord Calamity Kane, please forgive my rashness and disrespect. I was desperate. I had no way to escape Totoland." Her voice trembled and she sobbed. Big tears fell onto the planks, darkening the wood. She'd risked sneaking onto the Rayquaza because of Katakuri's hint that night. Only this ship, which even Mama had temporarily avoided confronting, could slip past the homies and the searches that choked Totoland. "Please take me with you. I'll never forget your kindness. I swear on my life I'll repay you." Loki looked at Calamity Kane, his expression mixed, and opened his mouth as if to speak, then stopped. The others aboard the ship also watched Kane. They felt sympathy for Chiffon and wanted to help her defy her fate, but the decision lay with the captain alone. Calamity Kane said nothing at first, studying the kneeling woman as if weighing something. After a long, heavy silence, a faint smile curved his mouth. "Well, our Rayquaza happens to be short a decent pastry chef. Interested?" "Ah?" Chiffon blinked, stunned, then took several seconds to register. Calamity Kane, you mean you'd take me in?" She could barely believe it. Then, as if reality sank in, she bit her lip and admitted the truth, shame and fear mingling in her voice. "I'm a traitor to the Charlotte family now. If Mama finds me, she'll rage, send people after me. She'll hunt me down. It'll bring huge trouble to your ship." Yamato and the others exchanged looks, then instead of worry, burst into booming laughter as though she'd told a joke. Chiffon only grew more bewildered. "I'm talking about the pirate emperor, Charlotte Linlin." Calamity Kane waved a hand and stifled his smile. "Charlotte Linlin isn't someone I worry about. If I choose to take you in, whatever consequences follow are my problem alone." He had just beaten Charlotte Linlin himself. She wouldn't be thinking about the Rayquaza anytime soon. And if she did rage and seek revenge, her children and subordinates would likely try to hold her back. If she learned Chiffon and Loki were on the same ship, she might even be pleased. So decide, stay or go. Chiffon's eyes sparked with resolve. "Thank you, Captain. I will stay. Please take care of me." She bowed again, but this time it wasn't begging. It was the salute of a crew member to her captain. "Good." Kane nodded, then his tone grew brisk and serious. "I have an important task for you." Chiffon stiffened, fear flashing through her. Was he insisting she marry Loki after all? She clenched her fists, prepared to refuse outright. Instead, Kane continued, "Make us your best chiffon cake." Oh, the tension broke. Surprise gave way to joy and purpose. "Mission accepted. I'll make the very best cake to treat everyone." Oh, we're counting on you, Chiffon. We're so looking forward to it." The crew cheered. At the tea party earlier, they'd all wanted to taste that wedding cake. "Leave it to me." Chiffon's face lit up with new meaning and resolve. She had a stage again. "Miss Chiffon, please allow me to assist you." Sanji bowed elegantly and entered the galley. Though famous for savory dishes, he was no novice at pastries. Together with Chiffon and the ship's cooks, they worked in close harmony. By evening, a grand, exquisite cake stood in the center of the deck, several tiers high, its white cream smoothed like fresh snow, piped flowers delicate, and glistening berries scattered across it, the aroma of eggs and milk rich and pure. The cake rivaled the ruined wedding confection in every respect. Calamity Kane took in the longing faces around him, laughed, and waved his hand. "What are we waiting for? Let's feast!" Yay! Cheers erupted across the Rayquaza. The first bite, sweet cream, juicy fruit, and the fluffy, cloud-like cake sent every palate into rapture. Eyes shut in unison, everyone wore expressions of bliss. It's too good. My toes curled. This is incredible. Perfect skill, perfect flavor. Truly missed Chiffon's work. They didn't hold back their praise. Chiffon beamed, proud as any chef could be. After a moment, she took a piece and walked over to the rail. Loki sat on his flame cloud outside, eating his cake. Lord Loki, about before, I'm sorry. Loki waved her off roughly. Just call me Loki. We're partners now. Chiffon's shoulders relaxed, and she smiled freely. Yes, Loki. Partners. She leaned on the rail and chatted with him as the sea breeze played through her hair. Their laughter drifted across the deck. Watching them, Calamity Kane nodded. His little lesson had worked. It's easier to move forward when people are unburdened. Violet drifted over and whispered conspiratorially, Calamity Kane, what do you think? Shall I use my mind reading on them for a peek? Thump! Ow! What was that for? Violet clutched her forehead, offended. Kane withdrew the finger he'd used to flick her, rolling his eyes. Use it if you want to be isolated. Partners have their secrets. The next day, Morgan's report, dressed up with every flourish, spread across the world like a storm. The seas erupted, headlines screamed, the Battle of Two Emperors on Cake Island. Big Mom Charlotte Linlin defeated, the undisputed strongest pirate crew, the Beasts Pirates. All the papers ran the Cake Island incident. Some gossips even dubbed the Beasts the Dual Emperor Pirates. Morgan's went further still. He brazenly published a close-up photograph of Charlotte Linlin unconscious. Morgan's explained to Calamity Kane, since you don't mind the fuss, I can't hold back. Kane no longer bothered to hide his strength. Having already taken down 2 admirals, he was on the Gorosei's radar. Concealment was pointless. Better to turn his victories into fame. On deck, Chiffon unfolded a freshly printed paper. Seeing that the destruction of Mother Carmel's image and the wedding cake were attributed to Calamity Kane, she said, apologetic, I'm sorry, Calamity Kane, for making you take the blame. Kane waved it off. You're part of this ship now. It's not unfair. Calamity Kane, look, your new bounty poster. Yamato raced over, brandishing the latest bulletin. Kane took it and skimmed the figure. A small smile crossed his face. Calamity Kane, bounty, 3,000 berries. At last, his crew no longer had higher bounties than their captain. On Cake Island, Charlotte Linlin had recovered and saw her humiliating photo in the paper. Rage roared up. That damn Birdman! Go! Kill that bastard Morgans for Mama. Her Haoshoku haki surged uncontrollably, shaking the room. Katakuri hurried forward to calm her. Rest, Mama. Cracker has already left with his men. I'm sure that loudmouth will be dealt with. Linlin's fury cooled a fraction, but then she thought of another target. And hunt down that traitor Chiffon. Spare no effort, dig up every corner if you must, and drag her out for me. The family ministers felt a cold dread. Though Mama didn't say how she'd punish Chiffon, everyone understood the likely outcome. A complex pity took root among many. Chiffon was kind and well-liked. Some recalled Calamity Kane's words before he'd left. Opera, what bad luck to die by your own mother's hands. Katakuri, as an elder brother, you must take care of your siblings. Their glances drifted to Katakuri's broad back, steady as a mountain. If only he were captain, some silently thought. An idea they'd never have dared voice before now had quietly sprouted. Far away on Onigashima, Kaido sat guzzling sake and weeping dramatically. Old hag Linlin, how did you get so weak? Then, as quickly as the tears came, they stopped. He smashed his empty gourd down and burst into booming laughter. Whoa, the world's strongest pirate crew, huh? That kid Calamity Kane did good. King, seeing the poster with Loki's face and a 2.6 billion bounty, frowned. Loki? Has he been recruited by him? The thought of Elbaf and other forces joining Calamity Kane made King uneasy. Without Kaido himself, the remaining beast pirates might not be enough to meet this new threat. Queen, in his lab, was unmoved. When he heard Calamity Kane had brought down Charlotte Linlin, his fat face twitched, then smoothed out. He hummed and went back to tinkering with his machines. The gap was simply too large. The idea of competing with someone like Kane faded. Once the thought of lying flat and surviving took hold, the world felt suddenly wider. It only took a few days for everyone to get used to having a top pastry chef on board. Since Chiffon came aboard, Afternoon tea had quickly become the girls' favorite ritual. One by one, she and Sanji reproduced Totoland's signature sweets with deft hands and exquisite presentation, turning the Rayquaza's dining table into what everyone began to call Little Totoland. Charlotte Linland's years of pillaging had a strange upside. Totoland's recipe library contained desserts from across the globe. Now those recipes served Kane and his crew. After weeks at sea, the Rayquaza finally returned to Wano's waters, and Kane received an unprecedented, almost fanatic welcome. Almost every beast pirate who'd been on Onigashima and had no pressing task rushed to the port. From the moment Kane appeared at the rail, a thunderous roar swept across the island. "Kane! Kane! Kane!" they cried, waving and jumping, some with tears in their eyes. "The fifth emperor! Fifth emperor! Fifth emperor!" Their cheers sounded like worship. Having personally defeated Charlotte Linland, Kane's prestige among pirates who worshipped raw strength now rivaled Kaido's. Even King's position as first mate seemed to wobble. Kane only shook his head and sighed. "Ah, you're making me embarrassed." "You're incredibly popular here," Loki observed when he stepped onto the dock, hammer in hand. Even in Elbaf, his father had never inspired such devotion. Those nearby explained who Loki was, the Curse Prince, a super great pirate with a 2.6 billion berry bounty, and the crowd's astonishment deepened. To have a powerhouse like him in Kane's crew made the clamoring devotees even more sure of his status. After settling Loki and Chiffon aboard, Kane went to the banquet hall on Onigashima to report to Kaido and to coordinate with King, the beast's chief steward. Kaido, as always, mostly served as a living mascot. King handled the actual work. "I've sent Jack and the others to take possession of the 5 islands ceded by the Charlotte family," Kane said. "Initial defenses should be finished in about half a month." King's voice was steady. "The trade route with Elbaf is open. Giant goods are well known in the New World now. Nearly 70% of our initial investment has been recovered." King was cautious and responsible, never slacking, even though Elbaf was clearly in Kane's sphere of influence. Kane approved. After a brief discussion about the Beast Pirates' recent affairs, King brought up the matter Kane had asked him to watch, Trafalgar Law. "We've got intel," King said. "The Heart Pirates were last spotted at Notice Island in the North Blue." At the name, Kaido's drunken eyes flickered with interest. "Is that kid special?" Kane didn't hide it. "He's an Opiop no Mi user." Kaido's gaze sharpened. The 4 words said everything: 5 billion berries worth of fruit. King glanced at Kane, surprised that Kane had such top-secret information. The Opop no Mi had caused a scandal when it briefly appeared in the world. Many forces had fought for it before it vanished. Now it seemed to be in the hands of an obscure young pirate. "If you want to find them, act fast," King warned. "Their ship's a decent submarine. If they stay submerged, it'll be hard to lock them down." "Thanks." Kane left at once. Back at his Onigashima residence, he gathered his companions and made his decision. "You're leaving without us?" Yamato pouted, cheeks puffed like a blowfish. "You can't just ditch us and go sightseeing. This isn't for fun," Kane said with a wry smile. "I'll try to be quick." Violet stood with her hands on her hips, chin high with pride. Without her glare fruit power, an ability that could scan thousands of kilometers, finding a stealthy submarine alone might take months. "Heh, now you know how useful I am." Kane looped an arm around her waist, shifted into his divine dragon form, and shot into the sky toward the North Blue, Violet beside him. Lubnir Kingdom in the North Blue was famous for its scenic beauty and its history of exploration. Its national museum was packed with artifacts gathered by royal-sponsored expeditions from all 4 seas. Inside the museum's majestic halls, artifacts were arranged by region, a model of Ohara's Tree of Knowledge, Alabasta's golden scepter, relics used by the giants. "Look, Law, that scepter is gorgeous. Are those gems on it?" Beppo, the white bear crewmate, pointed excitedly at the Alabasta scepter behind protective glass. Trafalgar Law, tall, guarded, hat on his head, a long sword at his side, answered in a calm, patient tone. "The plaque says those are rubies from Fass Island." Beppo moved on, but then his eyes landed on a silver-white amber-lead statue, and he visibly panicked. He shifted to block Law's line of sight, stammering, "That Law! I want to see something else. Come with me." Law, used to Beppo's quirks, was about to turn when a conversation from across the hall snagged his attention. Kane, look, this amber lead piece from Fleavance, its sheen is like moonlight. It is beautiful, the masked man replied, but it's also the source of Fleavance's destruction. Law stopped in his tracks. People rarely spoke of amber lead that way. In the public imagination, amber lead had been Fleavance's fortune. Its commercial value was celebrated. The masked pair continued, and a chill ran through Law as they explained how inhaled amber lead particles accumulated in miners' bodies, how the toxin passed down through generations, so newborn lifespans shortened until most children in Fleavance couldn't live past 10. And Fleavance was stripped of its future. Violet's brows drew together. The world government lied. They said Fleavance was destroyed by a contagious disease. Kane shrugged. Cruelty by the world government was no surprise. Entire nations had been sacrificed for gain many times. Law and Beppo listened, both surprised that someone would openly speak against the government in a public museum. Law stepped forward, voice low. Be careful. Publicly criticizing the world government won't do you any favors. The man only chuckled, amused and contemptuous. Compared to other things I've done, I think the celestial dragons would prefer that I just complain about them. Law's frown deepened. Who did this masked man think he was? Before Law could pursue it, Kane's composed voice floated over. Trafalgar Law, survivor of Fleavance. Or should I use your full name? Trafalgar D. Water Law. Beppo's protective instinct snapped. Who are you people? Don't even think about hurting our captain. Kane's chuckle faded into a low pressure that spread like a mountain's shadow. Nearby tourists collapsed to the floor, knocked out by the force of Conqueror's haki. Law felt it drill through him. He knew immediately he was outclassed. He kept his hand hidden behind his back, quietly forming room. Violet folded her arms and smirked. Don't bother trying to run. You won't get away from Kane. That remains to be seen. Law's smile was strange as he flicked his fingers. Slaughterhouse. A translucent hemispherical space, room, expanded, enclosing Kane, Violet, Beppo, and Law himself. Relief and a surge of confidence warmed him. Beppo, get Shaki, Penguin, and Shachi and get out of here. Leave this to me. Understood. Beppo darted away, knowing staying would only be a liability. But Kane and Violet didn't chase him. They stood unhurried as though watching a performance. That composure gnawed at Law, but his resolve hardened. He had been underestimated many times. He'd survived. He sharpened his intention and lashed out. Amputate. He thrust his 2 fingers toward Kane, his signature move meant to sever. But the instant his fingers reached the masked man, they met immovable resistance. Whatever he tried, Law couldn't provoke more than the faintest reaction. His technique, which had worked countless times, was absorbed without ripple. Had your fun? Kane's voice was flat, emotionless, but it carried a suffocating weight. Now it's my turn. Before he finished, a perfectly measured wave of Conqueror's haki slammed into Law, precise and crushing. Captain! Law! The 4 shouts, shock, anger, worry, came all at once. Beppo, Penguin, Shachi, and Bia had rushed forward the moment Law collapsed. A voice, cool and amused, cut through the chaos. Oh my, all so eager. In that case, sleep tight. No sooner had it been spoken than the 4 pirates' forward momentum halted. One by one, they slumped into an instant, childlike sleep. Someone murmured in blissful unconsciousness. When Law's eyelids finally fluttered and opened, he recognized the ceiling pattern, the faint metallic damp sheen. This was the Polar Tang's captain's cabin. When had he been brought back aboard? His mind was a fog of images and sounds. He mumbled, more to himself than anyone else, no. Memories slammed into him, sharp and sudden. He shot up in bed, muscles coiling. You're awake. The voice beside him was calm, but it sent a chill down his spine. Law turned his head. The same man from the museum sat casually in the chair, no mask now, peeling an apple with a small knife. That face, he'd seen it before. The thing that clicked his thoughts into place hit him like cold water. You are Calamity Kane, he said, pupils narrowing to pinpricks. Kane didn't bother to look up. Congratulations, you guessed correctly. With a practiced flick of his wrist, the last curl of peel slipped away in one long, flawless strip that landed on the floor like a ribbon. The apple in his hand was polished, smooth, perfect. He admired it a moment, then, without ceremony, placed it into Law's still-dazed palm. A reward, he said. I don't usually peel fruit for outsiders. He clapped his hands as if he'd done something magnanimous. Consider yourself lucky, kid. Law stared at the cool apple, then at Kane. A twitch passed over his face. A slap and an apple? These top-tier figures really were that whimsical. He forced his thoughts into order and met Kane's gaze. Cut to the chase, Kane. You're after my Ope no me, aren't you? Kane nodded, as if stating the weather. That's right. So what's your offer? Law asked, trying to keep his voice steady. His hands were clenched until his knuckles shone white. If you come with me and serve, I will let your crew go. Law's heart lurched. He swallowed and forced himself to speak, cold and decisive. Then let them go and never speak of any of this. Otherwise, I'd rather die than perform the so-called immortality surgery for you. That had to be his bargaining chip. He would not relinquish the chance to keep his friends alive. Kane's expression shifted from amused to mildly puzzled. What are you talking about? When did I ever say I wanted that immortality surgery? Kane asked. He scrutinized Law. And with you barely awakened to your devil fruit's power, do you really think you could pull off such a legendary operation? Law was stunned into silence. Kane continued, unhurried. I want you to join the beast's pirates. If your companions are willing, they may join as well. As a show of goodwill, I can help you settle a small problem. What goodwill? Law demanded. Don Quixote do Flamingo, the Don Quixote family. Kane's voice was matter-of-fact. I understand your grudge runs deep. He laid it out, deliberately crossing the most wound Law had kept buried for years, Rocinante, his benefactor. Don Quixote Rocinante was gravely wounded by Virgo on Swallow Island, and Don Quixote do Flamingo shot him dead. You, how do you know that? Law's voice rose with panic and pain. He had never told anyone that secret. Rocinante's death was the scar that woke him in the night. Kane watched him coolly. Law recovered his composure quickly. Doflamingo works with the beast's pirates, he said. You'd jeopardize a major alliance just to help me? Kane gave a small smile. You underestimate your value. If Whitebeard's commanders could be persuaded that you can help Whitebeard, extend his life even a little, then many with grievances against the Don Quixote family would be glad to help eliminate that thorn. They have no love for Doflamingo either. Law breathed in hard, feeling the old ache in his chest flare and then settle into a hard, resolute calm. If you can truly help me get revenge, if you help me erase Doflamingo, then, Trafalgar Law, I will serve you. No ulterior motives. I will not betray you. Rocinante had given him a second chance at life. He would bargain with devils if he had to. Kane's lips curved. He extended his right hand. Then it's a deal. Deal. Law gripped it as if holding hope itself. He told his crew, Beppo, Penguin, Shachi, Bia, what he'd decided. For a long moment they were frozen, processing the idea that a small band of North Blue pirates might join an Emperor's crew. They pulled him aside, whispering frantic questions. Law, are they forcing you? You don't have to stay. We'll find a way to escape. Law shook his head. He looked at each of them in turn, steady and firm. I chose this. The New World is deadlier than North Blue. If you're not willing to take that risk with me, you can leave now, and I won't blame you. Their answers were immediate and unanimous. No way. We swore when you saved Penguin and me that we would never leave you. I'm not going anywhere. You promised I'd see Zoo again. One by one, they refused to abandon him. Law felt something hot behind his eyes. He bowed his head so they wouldn't see him break. He muttered under his breath, rough and affectionate, a bunch of idiots. Violet, watching from nearby, tipped her head. Their bond is something else, she remarked quietly to Calamity Kane. Kane nodded. Bonds like that were part of the sea's nature. He broke the moment with a clap. Well then, let's go. Time doesn't wait. Understood, Boss Calamity Kane. Law quickly tried to get the polar tang moving. Kane cut him off. No need. Your submarine is too slow. Penguin blinked, offended. He wasn't bragging, but the polar tang was advanced. There isn't anything faster in North Blue, is there? Violet placed her hands on her hips and grinned. You'll see. They followed Kane up and out of the sub, and then every one of them gasped. Dragon! Beppo's eyes nearly popped out. Penguin, Shachi, Bia, frozen open-mouthed. Even Law, usually stone-faced, looked stunned. Kane shifted, and where a man had been stood a colossal dragon, the divine dragon, power and scale made the air hum. 2 dragon claws shot out and closed around the hull, one on each side. The submarine rose, the sea falling away beneath them. They were airborne. It's flying! It's flying! Beppo shrieked. clinging to Law's arm and shaking it like a buoy, desperate to let the excitement out. "Get used to it," Violet said with a smirk. "There'll be more surprises." They flew to Wano. The island rose from water ringed by sheer cliffs. "There, Wano country, the beast's pirate's stronghold," Violet announced with pride. They pressed their faces to the viewing glass until their features were distorted. "Don't miss anything," Kane warned over the roar of wind. "Prepare to land." The dragon angled down, the claws slipping, and the polar tang crashed into Wano's inland waters with a titanic splash. The sub rocked and settled. Crew members clung to handrails as they disembarked. At once a tide of pirates swarmed them, voices hailing Kane. The pirate presence made even Beppo shrink. Violet scoffed at the newcomer's fear. "This is nothing. The true executives are far stronger." Kane led the Heart Pirates toward Onigashima's main hall. He called together his core crew so new and old could meet. When they saw Loki, huge as a moving hill, everyone gaped again. "Such a giant!" Beppo gaped. Loki lowered his head to Law's level and rumbled, "Is this the surgeon who can cure Yaruru?" Kane nodded. "In theory, yes. Whether it's possible depends on the surgery." Law listened closely. "You invited me so I could operate on someone?" "Yes, Yaruru, an elder giant from Elbaf. He's got a sword lodged in his head and suffers amnesia. Safely removing it while preserving his life isn't something ordinary doctors could guarantee. With the Op no Mi, you have the best shot." Law's brow furrowed. "It was a difficult operation. I need to examine him in person. I can't make a judgment from hearsay." "No rush," Kane said. "Settle in on Onigashima tonight and rest. We'll depart for Elbaf tomorrow. You won't be on this alone." On the ship, Rayquaza the next morning, with Loki traveling on a makeshift raft rather than a flame cloud, Law met the medical team Kane had assembled. Besides several assisting physicians, two names stood out, Dr. Kureha and Princess Manchuri. "Dr. Kureha is our senior surgeon. She'll help map out a reliable plan. Princess Manchuri will be our last line. She can help sustain Yaruru's life," Kane introduced them. Princess Manchuri peeked out from behind her guard, Leo, and offered a soft hello. Law returned the greeting politely. Dr. Kureha, though, leaned back and gulped from a bottle of plum wine, looking the very opposite of the prim, disciplined image of a surgeon Law expected. Wine never left her hand. It seemed glued to her lips. Law couldn't hide his disdain. Kureha laughed and snapped, "Kid, don't look down on us just because you got a devil fruit. This old woman has been a doctor for over 100 years. Patients disappear from my ward for two reasons: complete recovery or death." Law inclined his head. "Apologies," she grunted. "All right then, show me what you can do. Use your ability on me." "No theatrics," Law said, but he activated his power without another word. A translucent sphere, a room, expanded instantly. Law's precise blade severed one of Kureha's arms cleanly. "Doctorine!" Chopper shouted in shock. Kureha slapped the little reindeer without looking bothered. "Idiot! Look before you shout or you'll scare the patient. How clumsy!" Chopper's jaw dropped. He then stared at the severed limb and found himself even more astonished. The arm on the floor was moving its fingers as if nothing had happened. There was no blood. Kureha's shoulder was intact, no wound opened, and she herself didn't change her expression. Kureha gave a pleased, almost mischievous little sound. "Fufu, you see? You have a fine control over your power, kid. Clean sever. No blood because your room separated space without rupturing vessels beyond the sphere. And look, my arm is still functional." She waved the severed arm as if it were nothing. Then she plucked it up and, with a few swift, practiced motions, completed whatever sutures or medical reattachment she wanted with a toss of a bandage. A show, yes, but a useful one. Now let's see if you can do it under pressure, not just in a demonstration. Chopper bounced back and forth, flustered and embarrassed. Princess Manchuri's tiny face was full of admiration. Law watched Kureha carefully, always the surgeon in his mind, analyzing technique and intent. Kane clapped once. "Good. We know what we've got now. Rest tonight. We'll set sail for Elbaf at dawn." As the ship cut through Wano's inland waters, Law stood silent by the rail, apple still in his pocket. He had made a deal that tied him to a force far greater than the Heart Pirates. He had a promise he would keep no matter the cost. And ahead lay a giant with a sword in his head, the chance to do something impossible, and perhaps, by doing so, build the power he needed to settle his debt to Rosinante. Night fell over Onigashima, and the sails were set for Elbaf. Tomorrow, the knives would come out for real. Interesting. Kureha studied the arm she had completely severed with intense curiosity. She made it grasp and flex its fingers as if it were still attached to her body, every motion perfectly fluid. Then, seized by a playful impulse, she asked Law to perform a more thorough dissection. Under the stunned eyes of everyone aboard, Kureha proceeded to impersonate Louis XVI and then Shangyang in quick succession. The sight of her alive and animated, despite being chopped into pieces, drew gasps from the crew. At last, they understood why Kane had gone to such lengths to recruit Law. The Op no Mi was nothing short of a miracle for medicine. Come on, let's keep going. I want to see the limits. Having reattached herself flawlessly, Kureha dragged Law along, still unsatisfied, eager to explore more of the fruit's subtle uses. Time passed, and the massive crown of the Atom Tree loomed on the horizon. At the port, the giants who were working immediately spotted the familiar Rayquaza and dropped everything to rush over. King Kane, welcome back. Good day, Your Majesty. The Heart Pirates turned in confusion when the giants addressed Kane as king. A human could be king of the giant race? No wonder our new boss is impressive. Loki, who trailed behind the Rayquaza, caused an even greater stir as he was pulled onto the dock. It's Loki, the cursed prince. King Kane brought him in. Recognition hardened the giants' faces into hatred and distrust. The giant patrol in charge of order hurried forward, led by Redding, and Hajrudin was among them. Loki, Hajrudin barked, charging forward. You bastard! Finally caught! Loki only laughed. Hajrudin, after all these years, you're still as weak as ever. Hajrudin flushed and clenched his fists but had no rebuttal. That's enough, Kane cut in, diffusing the clash. He turned to Reading. Where is Elder Yaruru? Someone's been sent to fetch him. He'll arrive soon, Your Majesty, Reading replied with deference. King Kane, have you returned for Loki's formal trial? Kane shook his head. Prosecution can wait. There's something more important. I'm here to help get that sword out of Elder Yaruru's head. Soon Elder Yaruru arrived, his beard long as a waterfall. Kane introduced his medical team. With them here, we can remove the sword safely, he promised. A giant hesitated. Your Majesty, isn't this too risky? Elder Yaruru is very old. It was a sentiment shared by many. If a system runs, don't touch it. But Kane's face turned solemn. I want to treat him, yes. But there's a deeper purpose, to uncover the truth behind King Harold's assassination years ago. A shocked murmur went through the crowd. Wasn't that case closed? Loki was the murderer. Was there doubt? Hajrudin spat. Don't let him fool you. He's a villain. Many giants nodded, instincts hard and suspicious. Violet and the others watched Loki, wondering what trouble he'd caused to earn this scorn. Loki merely snorted, folding his arms. He did not care. Yaruru, however, stroked his beard and said slowly, I don't remember the details, but for some reason I don't feel any hatred toward Loki. Maybe King Kane is right. Perhaps there's another truth. Hajrudin scowled. Kane looked to the edge of the crowd and beckoned. Mr. Jabba, you were nearby that day, weren't you? Lipley glared at her husband. Ashan, you never told me. Jabba only scratched his grizzled hair and stepped forward. Shanks and I were indeed nearby. We didn't see everything, but when we got to the scene I felt unusual hockey. That hockey didn't belong to any giant warrior I knew. It felt like a certain enemy. Who? Hajrudin demanded. Jabba's expression went tight. I can't say for sure now. If Yaruru's memory returns, you'll find out. If it doesn't, my knowledge won't help Elbaf and might invite trouble. Hajrudin was left fuming but helpless. Kane concluded, then it's decided. We should prioritize treating Elder Yaruru. Though some doubts lingered, no one argued. They moved to a tavern whose square outside was large enough for the operation. Yaruru lay down calmly in the center, smiling. Room! With Law's low shout, a massive translucent sphere expanded. He swung his cursed blade Onakiri and, through the room, sliced off Yaruru's head along the sword's edge. The giants gasped. If Yaruru hadn't been obviously alive, they would have rushed Law. Yaruru, surprisingly, laughed when he saw his severed head. So this is what the inside of this old man's brain looks like. The medical team crowded in and examined the brain with focused urgency, pointing and debating in low voices until they reached conclusions. Kane stepped forward. Kureha took a swig of plum wine. Good news and bad news, which do you want first? Just tell me, Kane said. No fun. Kureha smirked, then got serious. Good news. With Law's Up no Mi, we can remove that sword with minimal trauma and cost. And with Princess Manchuri's healing, the theoretical success rate is very high. Bad news. The separation requires extremely delicate, continuous focusing from Law. It'll drain him like nothing else. If he falters at a critical moment, it could be catastrophic. Kane stroked his chin. So if Law's physical and mental strength can be kept up, the surgery will succeed. Theoretically, yes, Kureha said. Then it's simple. Kane snapped his fingers. Kuma, time to shine. The pawpaw fruit's ability to absorb and expel fatigue suited the plan perfectly. Preparations were made quickly. In the operating room, Yoruru was connected to nutrient solutions and giant-sized monitors. Under Kureha's direction, Law began to separate the sword from the brain tissue, blood vessels, and skull it had fused with. Time had bonded the blade and flesh together. Law had to be painstakingly cautious, pouring every ounce of mental energy into the task. Kuma stood by to expel the exhaustion whenever Law's mind stuttered or his strength ebbed. Kane absorbed the pink, paw-shaped fatigue bubbles with a casual ease. Production, transport, and absorption became a one-stop service. With their help, Law became a tireless, nuclear-powered surgical workhorse. From the sun high overhead until the stars were thick, he didn't stop. The dangerous, precise operation progressed in a relentless, efficient rhythm. At dawn's first light, the greatsword finally came free of Yoru's brain. It's a success! The giants, who had watched in anxious silence, broke into quiet cheers. Kane had done what Elbaf's people could not. Shut up! Don't make noise and disturb us! Kureha snapped, glaring at the celebrating crowd. There were only patients and doctors here, she reminded them. The giants clamped their hands over their mouths and stifled themselves. Kureha and Law worked to reassemble the cut brain tissue. After another intense hour, the last piece slid perfectly back into place. Princess Manchuri, it's up to you now. Law let out a long, exhausted sigh. Even with Kuma's help, nearly 20 hours of the Op no Mi's razor-sharp focus had taken everything from him. He relaxed for the first time and fatigue surged. Leave it to me. Manchuri, light as a feather, perched on Yoruru's wide forehead at the edge of the wound. She closed her eyes, folded her hands to her chest, and concentrated. Pearls of healing tears ran down her cheeks and fell precisely into the gap. Miraculously, fresh tissue knitted and grew, fibers intertwining at a visible pace. In 10 minutes, the bone-deep wound was gone, replaced by a faint pink scar, as if it had never been an injury. It's healed, Manchuri smiled, tired but radiant. The giants, unable to hold back any longer, erupted into thunderous cheers. Yoruru stirred at the commotion. The surgery's over? He sat up, stretching. I haven't slept this well in a long time. How do you feel? Kane asked. Yoruru frowned slightly as he probed his head, then his expression softened into something like ecstasy. Better than ever. My head, he laughed. It doesn't hurt at all. Before, if I tried to think hard, my head would ache. That's gone. It feels so much lighter. All the doctors let out a simultaneous relieved breath. The operation had been a complete success. Yoruru looked over the assembled team with gratitude. Loki cut in, blunt. Hey, old man, do you remember what happened that day? The smile drained from Yoruru's face. Solemnity, grief, and helplessness crossed him. Everyone knew his memory had returned. Loki did kill his father, King Harold, Yoruru said, but he wasn't trying to commit patricide. How can killing your father be something forced? Hajrudin snapped. Yoruru sighed. It can, because if Loki hadn't done it, Elbaf would have been destroyed. He told them what he had seen in Orastor Castle that day. Harold's appearance was wrong. His whole aura had turned dark and alien. Palace guards surrounded him and stabbed at him as if to kill him. It wasn't a rebellion, Yoruru said. Harold, he ordered them. I'm controlled by a demon. You must kill me, he cried. But their attacks did nothing. His life force didn't weaken. It grew stronger, and that evil aura intensified. In the end, Harold begged Yoruru and Loki for help, begging to be killed. Everyone already knew what came next. Loki struck the killing blow and bore the name of patricide, while Yoruru was grievously wounded in the struggle and lost his memory. Loki's long-held charge of patricide was finally lifted. The giants still didn't exactly love the notorious prince, but they no longer treated him as a criminal to be driven out. For the time being, the dark cloud that had hung over Elbaf had dispersed. After the giant race's internal matters were settled, Kane sought out Jabba, who had been watching quietly from the sidelines. Jabba frowned slightly. You want to know what happened after God Valley? By now you must have realized Harold's mutation is the same as Rock's back then. Kane's tone was solemn. To defeat whoever's hiding deep in the world government, I need more information, especially an effective way to deal with those immortals. You already know a lot. Jabba studied Kane for a long moment, then spoke slowly. Given what you've done for Elbaf and Yoruru, there's no harm in telling you. Back at God Valley, Kane's shock was hard to hide. So Rock's Conqueror's hockey had been so overwhelming that Roger and Garp had to combine their full power just to finally bring him down? Even if Roger and Garp hadn't been at their absolute peak that day, they were still Emperor-tier forces. That such a pairing had been required to break Rock's conquest, and his defenses explain why Rox had treated admirals like mere obstacles. Defeating Aimu, whoever pulled the strings now, would be a long, brutal road. Jabba's account also settled long-standing questions for Kane. Conqueror's hockey could be used for defense as well as offense. The current meta really was Hao Shoku. Teacher Kai had been right. Hockey transcends everything. Kane, he forced himself steady and met Jabba's eyes. Can you teach me those techniques? Jabba blinked. You want me to teach you? Kid, don't forget my history with Shanks. He looked incredulous, then softened. He had watched Shanks grow up and had a long friendship with him. Kane waved a hand, half smiling. One thing is one thing, and another is another. Besides, you've lived in Elbaf for years. Consider it a small knowledge tax to the king of Elbaf. Jabba didn't know whether to laugh or scold him. He felt no real ill will toward Kane. If anything, he respected his courage. His gaze drifted to Ace. Fine. Consider it a debt this old man owes. Relieved, Jabba began to explain and demonstrate two advanced uses of Conqueror's hockey. Ace, standing nearby, had gone pale. Jabba had fought alongside Roger. It contradicted Ace's image of the old marshal, cynical in many ways, but strict about right and wrong, intolerant of evil. If Jabba had stood with Roger, maybe Roger hadn't been as wicked as Ace had assumed. Sensing Ace's turmoil, Jabba looked at him and asked quietly, Ace, you're Roger's child, aren't you? Ace froze. You recognized me? Jabba's face softened with memory. Heh, hard not to. Your eyes, your smile, it's like looking at Roger when he was young. Kane, seeing the two needed privacy, patted Ace's shoulder and gave him a look that meant, have a good talk. Then he and the others drifted back toward the small tavern room, leaving the old friendship to its own quiet reckoning. On the way, the crew talked about Rox. A pirate like him stoked curiosity and hunger for legend. Conversation heated when they learned Loki had actually known him. Loki's expression grew distant as he recalled the man. Rox was unbelievably strong. He had the appetite to swallow the world. For a while, I even thought he was Nika, the warrior of liberation from giant tales, who laughs while bringing down the world, Loki said. But Rox wasn't after vague liberation. He wanted to be the king of the world. He shot a meaningful glance at Kane. One reason Loki had so readily joined Kane's command back then was that he'd sensed a similar spirit, someone who looked down on the world and aimed for its throne. King of the world? Yamato's eyes lit up. Kane, that's your goal too. Kane didn't deny it, nor did he get carried away. He simply nodded, a quiet confidence in the corner of his mouth. I'm not the same as him. I'll win. Of course you will. The others agreed. In their hearts, Kane was the strongest. Loki suddenly added, Rox once told me he wanted to cooperate with my father because of a force called the Great Mallet Regiment. He said they were sleeping somewhere in the world, and my father could rouse them. The Great Mallet Regiment? What's that? Everyone asked. Loki shrugged. He'd been raised in semi-isolation on Elbaf and didn't know much beyond his own island. Kane, however, had some inside knowledge. They're a guild of giant shipwrights who build colossal ships. The Ark Noah on Fishman Island was made by them. So, they're shipwrights? The crew frowned. Shipwrights didn't seem threatening. Why would Rox prize them? Kane smiled. Don't underestimate them. Each member of the Great Mallet Regiment carries the blood and power of the ancient giant race. Silence fell. That explained Rox's obsession. A top giant warrior might match a vice admiral, but giants of the ancient line surpassed ordinary giants in strength and potential. Combine them with Herald, and the Great Mallet Regiment could be an Emperor-level force. Do you know where they are? Yamato asked, impatient. Loki scoffed. How could he? Rox searched for years without success. I know one possible location. Kane nodded slowly. Punk Hazard, what became Icefire Island. There were figures of ancient giants frozen in the ice there. I suspect that island holds the prison of the Great Mallet Regiment. Loki stared. Could the tide of fate he'd longed for truly come through this man? Why else would Kane know what Rox couldn't find? It felt like providence. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go rescue them now. Yamato was already rub-rubbed with excitement. Kane stopped her. It's a Marine base now. We can't just rush in, not until we're ready for an all-out war with the Marines and the world government. He also had another reason not to rush. There was a scientist he wanted to recruit, Vegapunk. But now was not the time to try to snatch the world's greatest mind from the government. Yamato's enthusiasm wilted like a sun-scorched blade. The next morning, the Rayquaza sailed again. Jabba's family came to the port to see them off. Goodbye, big brother Kane. Goodbye, everyone. Kuran jumped and waved, his small voice full of life. Watching the Rayquaza's silhouette recede, Lipley asked softly, Ashan, do you think Kane will be the next Rox? Jabba remembered his talk with Ace and smiled ruefully. No, Lipley, he'll surpass Rox. Under a clear sky, sunlight poured across the blue sea. The Rayquaza cleaved the water, leaving a long wake of white foam. Everyone on deck had their own routines and training. Kane was no exception. Jabba had taught him 2 advanced Conqueror's hockey techniques. In truth, there was only one fully taught technique. Jabba hadn't completely mastered using Haoshoku for defense. He offered only a direction. Guide your will so the Conqueror's hockey flows through your body like water, resisting and wearing down attacks. It's akin to armament hockey hardening, but exponentially harder. Most Conqueror's hockey users can only use it for outward intimidation. Coding or integrating it into the body is extremely precise and difficult. Simply coding attacks is already an Emperor-level achievement. Making that unruly force obedient enough to evenly cover the body is another magnitude harder. The other technique was simpler and already used by Luffy. Coat an enemy's wound with Conqueror's hockey so it cannot heal, like napalm. Jabba had used that move to defeat Somatsu. Kane chewed a meteorite fragment and focused on a water balloon in his hand. Under his feet lay rubber shards from the practice explosions. Around him, companions who'd learned Conqueror's hockey tried the same drill. The popping of balloons kept time across the deck. The water inside Kane's balloon began to writhe, countless tiny bumps crawling just beneath the surface as faint black and red currents flickered around. Bang! The balloon burst predictably. Little Bonnie, acting as assistant, handed him a fresh balloon without missing a beat. Big brother Kane, you lasted 2 seconds longer than last time, she cheered. Kane smiled. I feel like I'm close. He narrowed his eyes. Black and red hockey lightning flared from his palm and flowed into the balloon. Bonnie reflexively covered her face for the expected splash. Seconds passed. No bang. She begrudgingly parted her fingers and peered through. The balloon was whole, perfectly round, and Kane was smiling. You did it, Bonnie cried. Kane squeezed his palm. Poof! The balloon detonated on his command. The Conqueror's hockey backlash struck his own hand, a numb, corrosive sting. He studied that new quality of hockey with a satisfied grin. He'd made it stick like a maggot to the bone, continuously blocking and corroding a target's natural restoration. At last, he had a way to handle immortal bodies. It was only symptomatic relief, though. From God Valley, the only way to truly remove an immortal body was absolute power that could grind away the curse itself. As for breaking through an enemy's Conqueror's hockey defense, Kane had a plan: practice. Let the body instinctively learn to mobilize Haoshoku under repeated powerful blows. Quantity breeds quality. Enough hits might force a natural mastery, like armament hardening. A sweet scent drifted from the galley and stole everyone's attention. Chiffon emerged with a tray of golden, steaming small cakes and intricately shaped cookies. Everyone's been working hard, she smiled, setting the tray down. Take a break and try these. You'll need energy to keep training. Even Ace and Zoro, deep in their own drills, were drawn by the aroma. Bonnie was grabbing a warm cake and closing her eyes in delight. It's perfect. Big Sister Chiffon, you're the best. Kane bit into a piece and nodded. The soft cake balanced sweetness and texture beautifully. Excellent, thank you. Laughter and chatter filled the deck as they shared the snacks. Kane savored the moment of peace and sweetness. For all of it, these faces, this ship, this brief calm, any amount of bitter training was worth enduring. Wano country, Onigashima. Kane wasted no time. He strode straight to King, who was hunched over a stack of papers, and asked about the surveillance on Don Quixote do Flamingo. It was time to make good on his promise to Law. King blinked, as if waking from a dream. Monitor do Flamingo? I seem to have forgotten to send anyone. A rare flicker of confusion crossed his sharp eyes. Kane's brow tightened. King wasn't the careless type. He wouldn't simply forget a mission like that. If his memory really were that poor, he couldn't possibly run the beast's pirates with the efficiency he did. The sensation of familiarity rose in Kane's chest, a chill of recognition. There was only one explanation. Someone had used a power to erase all traces of the men King had sent, even everyone's memories of them. Kane's mouth lifted in the smallest of smiles. It sounded absurd to most, but he knew such an ability did exist on the seas, the Hobi Hobi no Mi. Doflamingo almost had him fooled. Is Doflamingo behind this? King asked, reading Kane's expression. If I'm not mistaken, it's the effect of a devil fruit, Kane said. Leave it to me. I'll deal with Doflamingo. King didn't argue. He only warned. Remember to clean up afterward. Don't worry. Kane returned to his residence and gathered his core companions. Yamato, I need you. He intended Yamato to lead the team. A single Don Quixote family operation didn't warrant his personal involvement, but it did call for someone strong and direct. What's the task? Yamato's white eyes brightened. Go to Dressrosa and capture the core members of the Don Quixote family, preferably alive. If not, kill them. Okay. Yamato punched a glove-clad fist into her palm, eager. Kane paused and added, Kuma, Eneru, Violet, you three go with her. Strength-wise, the Don Quixote family combined might not match Yamato now, but in cunning, 10 Yamatos wouldn't measure up to Doflamingo. To be safe, Kuma's steady experience in rescuing slaves would keep things under control. Eneru's unmatched mobility and Violet's reconnaissance skills made the team foolproof for a Dressrosa raid. If they ran into something extreme, few could stop them from leaving. He turned to Law, who was breathing faster now. Are you coming, or waiting here for news? Law didn't hesitate. I want to go. The chance to strike his enemy with his own hands was too urgent. Good, you're in. Kane laid out the mission. Doflamingo and Umit have been secretly taking fishmen and mermaids to sell to the celestial dragons. Your job is to stop that. Understood, Yamato thumped her chest. The 5 of them, Yamato, Kuma, Eneru, Violet, and Law, headed to the port. Kuma, I'm leaving them with you, Kane said. Although Yamato was nominally in charge, Kuma was the backbone. An old revolutionary, he'd been through many rescues. I will bring everyone back safely, Mr. Kane, he promised solemnly. Kane repeated one warning with deliberate force. First thing, find the little girl named Sugar. Knock her out and control her. Don't let her touch any of you under any circumstances. Even with Yamato and Kuma's haki, Sugar's Hobi Hobi no Mi could turn them into toys if given the chance. It was better to be paranoid than sorry. You've said it 3 or 4 times already, Violet muttered as Eneru, gnawing an apple, scratched at his ear and vanished in a flash of lightning, an instant quick attack to the ship. Kane, we're off, Yamato waved, fired up for the mission. After the others boarded, Kuma strolled to the stern and slapped the hull. Bang! A propulsion formed, a transparent paw-shaped bubble wrapped the ship. With a roar, as if thrown by an invisible giant's hand, the ship leapt into the sky and vanished toward the horizon. Kane stood on the quay and watched them go, hoping for a smooth run. Dressrosa, the royal palace on King's Plateau. Within its most private chamber, a decadent secret auction was underway. The auctioneer was none other than Don Quixote do Flamingo himself, a shichibukai and a figure of the underworld. For him to wield the gavel in person said everything about his guests. At center stage sat a huge glass tank of seawater. Its only occupant was a beautiful young mermaid, tears tracking down her face. A slave collar cinched her neck. Cornered against the cold glass, she hugged her tail and trembled. Her fragility didn't inspire pity. It stirred the sadistic appetites of the assembled distinguished buyers. Hurry up, Doflamingo, a voice crackled through a den mushi. I can't wait to see her fight a shark. Such a delicate mermaid should be enjoyed first, another cooed with lascivious laughter. A chorus of leering laughs came from the shell phones. Doflamingo waited until the noise died down and then spread his arms. The special auction for mermaid slaves begins now. The first item, a 16-year-old eel mermaid. Opening bid, 100 million berries. 45 Den Mushi in front of him erupted into frantic bidding. Numbers climbed like wildfire. 150 million, 220, 500, 600. A pompous voice threatened, anyone who dares bid against me is an enemy of the Manmaya family. The affront amounted to nothing among the descendants of the creators. A sneering retort came, you don't represent the Manmaya family. 600 million and one berry. The bids leapt onward, and the mermaid finally sold for 700 million. Umit, tucked in a corner, watched the tally with a rapt, greedy smile. A mermaid of that quality would formerly fetch 300 million. Now the sum had easily doubled. Monopoly was the most lucrative business on Earth. As more tearful mermaids were priced like possessions, Umit's ledger filled with astronomical figures and a dizzying, suffocating joy. Then a bang cracked from the wall. Umit started, nearly dropping his book. The auction stuttered. 45 Den. Den Mushi burst into a chorus of outrage and accusations. Doflamingo, what is going on? Useless. Control your palace. If you can't, get out. Others will take over. Doflamingo's veins bulged. He forced a smile. Calm down, honored guests. It's a small incident. I'll handle it. A dark figure suddenly smashed backward through the damaged wall and skidded into another. The plaster honeycombed outwards and dust rained down. Diamante. Bloodied and broken, Diamante lay half embedded in the wreckage. Doflamingo lunged to his side. The ornate cloth of Diamante's garb was torn, blood soaking the fabric. His chest caved in. He breathed like a wick in the wind, barely there. With the last of his strength, he tried to speak. His voice was thin and panicked. Young master, hurry, go. His head lolled. The light drained from his eyes. He slid into the rubble, motionless. Diamante! Doflamingo's expression went black. Grief and fury curdled his features. From his body, a ripple of haki burst out, dark and tinged with crimson, turning the air heavy and suffocating. I swear, I will avenge you, he growled, the words like a curse. He rose slowly, eyes hot behind his crimson glasses. A new hole opened in the wall with a thunderous crash. These winding corridors are annoying. Violet, why did your ancestors build this palace like a maze? A white-haired woman with a spiked club stomped in, complaining. Doflamingo's face contorted into a mask of fury. His secret plan had been pierced. He had been meticulous, even using sugar to erase traces. So how? Found you, Doflamingo. Come quietly and face Kane's judgment. Yamato's eyes sparkled. She pointed her club like a spear. Smashing through walls works fastest. Doffy! Treble arrived at Doflamingo's side, disheveled, leading a clutch of family executives. He sounded chastened. They attacked as soon as we arrived. We couldn't warn you in time. Kane's orders had been absolute. Do not harm fishmen and mermaids. Those who had crossed that line knew nothing good lay ahead. Doflamingo said nothing. Blaming his men now would change nothing. He had to end the crisis. At that moment, a small girl in a polka-dot dress padded into the room. A monocle sat over her left eye. Her bob cut framed a round, innocent face. Wiping phantom tears, she trotted toward Yamato with the most guileless expression she could muster. Big sister, are you here to defeat Doflamingo, that demon? Sugar's heart hammered. If she could touch Yamato, if she could make her a toy, everything could flip. She stepped forward. Crack! A bolt of lightning streaked down, cutting off Sugar's path. The flash resolved into a man with a golden thunder drum on his back and indifferent eyes. Eneru. He raised a finger and snapped. A flash from his fingertip punched into the girl like a bullet. She screamed. Sugar had no combat skill. The electricity seared through her. Her body convulsed. A moment later, the lightning faded. Her skin was charred, thin wisps of smoke curling from her mouth and nostrils. She crumpled to the floor, unconscious. Silence snapped over the room. Everyone stared. No one understood why Eneru had attacked a little girl. Only the Donkasode executives knew the truth. Sugar's Hobi no Mi was the linchpin of their operation. If Sugar could touch someone, she could turn them into obedient toys, the family's greatest shield and bargaining chip. How had the beast's pirates found out? Sugar! Doflamingo bellowed as fury and horror crashed together. The memories he'd shut away came flooding back. He'd thought that if Sugar turned the monitors into toys, Kane's men would be neutralized and his dealings with Umit would stay secret. He hadn't expected they'd be discovered, and now one of his own lay unconscious. With Sugar out of play, the Hobi Hobi no Mi's maintained hold collapsed. Across Dressrosa, the impossible happened. The countless humans who had lived as toys returned to their true forms in an instant. Factory workers, servants, neighbors, family members. Along with the bodies, memories came rushing back. Memories of being toy people, of being forced into servitude, of the humiliation of being property. The revelation hit the streets like a wildfire. Doflamingo turned our relatives into toys to be pets and free labor? Outrage, shock, and shame ignited into pure, uncontrollable fury. Voices rose like a storm. Back in the royal palace, Doflamingo watched the ruin of everything he'd built. The men he loved as family were dead or dying, his secret monopoly exposed. Rage broke into madness. The room trembled with the first steps of his descent. Bastard! Doflamingo bowed his head, each word dripping with bitter venom. You ruined my auction. You killed my family. He snapped his head up, eyes bloodshot behind the shattered lenses, fixed on Yamato. I'm going to. His voice went cold and cruel. Torture you to death, bit by bit. Before he finished, his fingers twitched almost imperceptibly. Invisible strings uncoiled from the ceiling and darted toward the back of Yamato's neck. Fufufu, become a puppet in my hands. What nonsense are you talking about? Yamato didn't turn her head. She reached back and plucked the strings out of the air with her hand. She sneered, disdain plain on her face. That petty trick won't work on me. Her observation hockey was sharp. Doflamingo's eye twitched, his anger flaring like gasoline. Fine, then I'll show you real power. A bounty doesn't show all I can do. 5-color string. He spread his 5 fingers. 5 transparent strings screamed through the air and lashed at her. Yamato's eyes narrowed, a white mist coiling around the spiked club in her grip. Shinsoku. Then she blurred, a streak of white light skimming the ground. Doflamingo's pupils shrank. So fast. White snake body. The 5 strings shattered against her advance before they could attach. The club, hardened with hockey and surrounded by freezing air, smote him square in the face with mountain-shattering force. His sunglasses exploded. Bones cracked audibly. Blood gushed from nose and mouth. Ice spread like a living thing from the point of impact, crystalline veins racing over his skin. He flew backward, trailing ice shards and spattering blood, plowing through walls and columns until he was hurled from the royal palace itself. Doffy! Young master! The Don Quixote executives stared in horror. How could their proud young master be felled so fast? Treble sobbed and swelled in rage, then charged first, followed by Pika, Jorah, and the others. Fear warred with loyalty. They would avenge him, no matter what. Don't get cocky, Pika's high, grating voice warned as his massive stone body sank into the floor and reformed beneath it. Law barked in alert. Careful, he's a stone fruit user. He can turn into and control rock. Jorah, triangular-framed glasses cocked, frowned at Law with a twitch of recognition. You? Memory dug up a face she had seen years ago. You're the brat Corazon saved? The one they said wouldn't live past 13? If her memory served, he'd had Amber Lead syndrome. You're still alive? You chose to stand against the Don Quixote family, she snarled. Prepare to die. A swirl of colorful, grotesque smoke spat from her palm and lunged at Law. I return your sentiment with interest. Law drew his cursed sword Kikoku. The blade flashed and neatly bisected the smoke, which vanished. Today I take my revenge for Corazon-san. He'd spent 3 years inside the family. He knew their tricks. Yamato, watching the chaos while Treble and the others surged, grinned and asked, Need help? No, Law said. I can handle them. Pika's stone fist, the size of a room, slammed down. Yamato hopped clear and looked up where a stone half-giant clung to the ceiling like an inverted bat. Your ability's kind of dull, she said with contempt. She swung her club toward the ceiling. A jet of white freezing air shot up and enveloped the stone giant. Ice raced over the rock's surface and froze it solid. The rock statue locked in place, and a plain iron rod punched clean through the frozen stone and struck Pika's hidden core. His eyes rolled back, and he slumped unconscious as his stone shell crumbled and his real body tumbled out, lifeless. Pika! Treble's cry was full of despair. Yamato landed lightly and scanned the remaining executives, almost amused. Any other interesting abilities? If not, I'll just send you all flying. They answered at once. Baby 5, cigarette dangling, transformed her hands into pistols and fired in a hail of bullets. Yamato barely flickered. Translucent ice armor covered her skin and deflected the rounds. Lao Ji puffed up into a grotesque muscle beast and launched a high-speed punch, then froze mid-smile as his fist struck an immovable 10,000-year iceberg. The impact cracked Yamato's armor, but the freezing air healed the fissures in an instant, sealing them as if untouched. Treble spat out globs of sticky mucus like cannonballs to disgust her. Machweiss floated and then slammed down with the weight of 10,000 tons. Dellinger, a horned fishman in red heels, rocketed in with a guillotine heel aimed for her neck. Monet inhaled and exhaled an avalanche of freezing breath. Gladius turned inanimate objects into explosive quills and launched them. Senior, wearing a baby bonnet and pacifier, popped up from the floor, apologetic but determined, and clamped Yamato's ankles with iron pincers to set up a sneak attack. Yamato lowered her head and regarded him with something like respect. Battle's supposed to be all in. I respect that. Lao Ji struck. G mark. But the blow met the white mist thrumming out from Yamato and froze into sculpted stillness. The entire room became a gallery of ice. Frozen attacks, frozen attackers, Monet among them, reduced to a perfect snow sculpture. Yamato's white lightning movement, the horse illusion blade, had woven through their assaults and filled the chamber with her freezing field. When the mist cleared, everyone and everything was immobilized in their last motion. Law, who had just severed Jorah's head, stared at the icy tableau, stunned. The Don Quixote family, this mountain of dread on his conscience, had been dismantled so quickly. Violet glanced over, arms folded, unfazed. Given Yamato's strength, it's not surprising. A low, ragged roar cut through the silence like a wound. Bloodied, clothes torn and encrusted with ice, Doflamingo crawled back into the room, half humiliated, half mad. His sunglasses were a shattered ruin across his face. The pride he'd placed in his subordinates flamed into a fury that bordered on despair. Unforgivable, he howled. Unforgivable. He'd killed his own father and brother, yet he clung to the idea of family with a deadly hunger. I'll tear you all apart. Everything around his feet, floor, pillars, ceiling, unwound into countless strings. In seconds, half the royal palace was a roiling sea of thread. What do we do? Law's voice was small. He had seen fearsome things, but nothing like this. Just watch, Violet said, calm and a little smug. Enjoy the show. Yamato stood at the eye of the storm, expression steady but eyes sharpening. Doflamingo's mastery had reached awakening, and that mattered, but true strength wasn't only about fruit development. She regarded him with new seriousness as white fur began to sprout rapidly across her skin. Her hybrid form was coming into being. Flapping white string! Don Quixote Doflamingo's brow nodded. His blood-stained right hand shot upward, and in an instant, tens of thousands of translucent white strings arranged themselves in a horizontal surge from the ground beneath Yamato, trying to envelop her completely. Yamato hopped up nimbly, skating clear of the first sheath of binding strings. But the sea of white, guided with Doflamingo's precise control, seemed almost alive, relentlessly chasing her through the air, sweeping in from every side and cutting off every escape. A flicker of impatience crossed Yamato's eyes. She stopped dodging. With a low cry, she swung her spiked club hard, and a burst of freezing air erupted outward like a circular shockwave. Wherever the strings met that freezing air, they instantly solidified, locked into place as if time itself had stopped. Yamato didn't hesitate. She drove her club through the frozen wall like a battering ram, shattering the ice like glass, and shot through the gap. Doflamingo seemed to have expected it. The moment the ice broke, he pulled back, then spread his arms wide like a flamingo taking flight and slammed them together toward Yamato. 1,000 arrows piercing the heart, feather strike strings. Thousands of strings, coated in armament hockey, fell on Yamato like a dense rain of arrows from both sides. It's useless. Your hockey is too weak, Doflamingo sneered. Yamato treated the volley as nothing. She condensed temporary sheets of ice in midair to use as footholds, swung her club, and shattered the incoming arrow strings as they struck. Her speed didn't falter. If anything, she left a white afterimage as she charged straight at Doflamingo. Doflamingo cursed inwardly. Her haki was stronger than he'd expected. He had to go all out. Divine execution! He thrust both arms forward. The ground of string trembled, and 16 gigantic waves of string surged up like geysers. A deep, pitch-black hue spread along their bases like spilled ink. In a heartbeat, 16 massive string spears, hardened with armament haki and several meters in diameter, formed, their points aimed at the white figure in the sky. With a series of high, whistling rushes, the giant string spears flew toward Yamato, weaving a net of death with no blind spots, attacking from above, below, left, right, front, and back. Each spear carried enough force to pierce mountains and tear ships apart. "Now that's more like it," Yamato muttered, then her expression sharpened. "Still not enough." Before she finished speaking, freezing air and haki surged into her iron club. "I'll end this with one move." A thick slab of ice condensed beneath her feet, and she shoved off from it with explosive force. Already lightning fast, she accelerated again, becoming a streak of light. Ice pillar slash. Only a straight, blurring streak, black-red Haoshoku lightning, mingled with white freezing air, remained in the sky. The club slammed into the giant string spears with a tremendous crash. Black-red Haoshoku lightning lanced out like writhing thunder snakes. Yamato's even stronger haki tore through the armament haki that fortified the spears and blasted everything outward. Stripped of their haki shield, the rigid spears were helpless against the extreme cold. They froze from the tips inward and shattered like brittle icicles, exploding into fragments of ice and string that filled the air. "No, impossible. My ultimate technique. How could it be so easily undone?" Doflamingo staggered. Pride and certainty that had always sustained him shattered in that instant. Before he could recover, the streak of white and black-red light was already upon him. With a sickening crack, the spiked club slammed into his chest. Bone broke audibly. Blood sprayed as Doflamingo was hurled backward, smashing through the palace wall and disappearing into dust. This time he had neither the chance nor the strength to rise. A bolt of lightning split the sky at that moment, and Eneru appeared within the electric blaze. He snatched up Doflamingo, who was unconscious and drenched in blood. "We won," he declared. Violet, who had been monitoring the fight with her clairvoyant power, couldn't help cheering. Tears of excitement glittered in her eyes. With the Donkusote family's downfall, the Riku family could reclaim Dressrosa. But Kuma did not bask in triumph. His kind gaze sharpened and fixed on Umit, who had been trying to shrink into the background from the start. Kuma walked over with heavy steps, his voice low and volcanic with barely restrained anger. "Those fishman slaves you captured, where are they now?" Umit trembled, cold sweat soaking his back. "That way! In that room!" He jabbed a trembling finger toward the depths of the palace. "All the slaves are there, 73 in total, none missing. I swear it." He wasn't trying to help out of kindness. Ever since members of the Beast's pirates had broken in, a subtle aura had been fixed on him, and he'd been terrified to move. He's telling the truth. Violet used her glare fruit's clairvoyance to rapidly scan the room Umit had indicated. "That's them. Great. What are we waiting for? Let's go rescue them." Yamato rushed forward, eager. "Right away." "Absolutely not." A frantic, haughty voice barked from a Denden Mushi in the corner that had somehow remained connected. Everyone turned. A few Denden Mushi had survived the battle and retained communication. One of them screeched into the line. "Those are slaves I bought with my own money. You lowly commoners of the lower world, back off at once. I'll have an admiral send the Marines to crush your beast pirates. I'll have you all arrested." Yamato frowned, picked up the offending Denden Mushi, held it to her mouth and snapped. "Hey, you arrogant buffoon, listen up. We will never let you harm any fishmen." The other end erupted. "What? How dare you insult us? You insolent commoners. You ungrateful wretches." A dozen voices shouted in panic and rage. The celestial dragons, self-styled gods, had always taken whatever they wanted from the lower world. To be hung up on and scolded was an indignity they wouldn't tolerate. Before they could marshal more threats, a chill of presence cut through the hall. Several figures burst in. Leading them was a cold-faced man with long red hair, his noble garments perfectly tailored and a costly western sword at his hip. Most striking of all was his face, uncannily identical to red-haired Shanks. "Settle down," he ordered. The man's eyes swept the room like an eagle's. By the highest command, no one is to demand the Marines take military action against the beast's pirates for any reason. The celestial dragons, who had been roaring with entitlement, visibly shrank as if a cat had walked in among mice. Many instinctively drew their necks in. This man was one of the gods' knights, directly under the world government's highest authority, endowed with the power to judge and even punish misbehaving celestial dragons. "Shah Shamrock! Don't be so bold," one of them sputtered, blustering but trembling. The red-haired man, Shamrock, looked at him with cold disdain. "This is a direct order from the Gorosei. Disobey at your peril." He ignored the silenced nobles and left with his god's knights as neatly as they'd arrived. In the lavish hall, the celestial dragons remained, confused and humiliated, exchanging uncertain glances but daring no further action. Back at the god's knights' headquarters, Shamrock went straight to the commander's office. Figurland Garling, his father and the commander, sat behind a grand desk, quietly reviewing documents. "Father, are we just going to stand by while the beast's pirates run rampant and openly challenge the world government?" Shamrock asked, his frustration barely masked. Kane's provocations had tested his patience. Garling didn't look up at once. His quill continued to scratch across parchment, and only that soft rustle filled the room. Shamrock stood respectfully at attention until Garling finally set the quill down and rested his chin on his clasped hands. "Has your temper cooled?" Shamrock bowed slightly. "Yes, father. I taught you early on that in all things one must keep a calm spirit." Garling's tone was even. "If we sent a massive force at every pirate who showed strength and insolence, no amount of Marines, CPs, or God's Knights would suffice." "What have the celestial dragons relied on to rule the world for 800 years?" he continued. "Was it irresistible military might? No, it was balance." Garling's eyes studied his son. The world government and the Marines, the world government and pirates, the Marines and pirates. The way of balance is everywhere. Our duty is not to extinguish every spark. Like the most skilled gardener, we must nip the most dangerous bud, the one that could upset the overall balance. The rest may exist within the limits we tolerate. Shamrock frowned. "But the beast's pirates, don't they exceed even the other emperors in strength?" "So what?" Garling scoffed. "Even if we gave them the whole new world, as long as they stayed there and didn't spread to the four seas, time would be on our side." He walked to the large window and gazed at the divine panorama of Mary Geoise. How mighty were the Rock's pirates once? Whitebeard, Kaido, Charlotte Linlin, today's emperors were all gathered on that one ship, yet we found a way and struck them down. Wasn't Rox dispatched by my own blade? He turned back to Shamrock. "To sit in my position, you must widen your view." Shamrock felt reverence swell in him. Garling's wisdom and poise were beyond measure. "Yes, father, I will follow your counsel." He bowed deeply. Garling nodded, then added softly, "Do not worry. The Gorosei are not idle. In about a year at the earliest, the power available to the world government will be strengthened unprecedentedly. When that time comes, we will not lack force. Remember, time is on our side." Back in Dressrosa, the rescued slaves had been gathered in the main hall that remained intact. Among them were the beautiful mermaid maids and several fishmen. With Umit's trembling, eager cooperation, the bomb collars were one by one. Law, acting as a healer, began treating cuts and bruises. "Thank you, Dr. Big Brother," one cheerful mermaid murmured after Law had bandaged her arm, then impulsively pressed a grateful kiss to his cheek. Law, the cold, distant surgeon, froze, his ears and neck flushing scarlet as his aloof facade crumpled. Violet nearby burst out laughing. While Law tended to the wounded, Yamato and the others pieced together the captured inmates' accounts. The scheme traced back to Kane's campaign to attract immigrants from Fishman Island. Fishman immigrants were being lured by the improved living conditions in Wano country. Word of prosperous lives spread back home, prompting more fishmen and mermaids to leave Fishman Island and risk the emigrant route. Doflamingo and Umit exploited the rote's weak oversight, laying traps and hauling the newcomers in like turtles in a jar. "Prepare to return," Yamato said, clapping her hands now that their objectives were complete. "Wait, what about this one?" Violet asked, nodding at Umit, who still tried to shrink into the crowd. Umit trembled, but forced a fawning smile and bowed repeatedly to Yamato. "This wouldn't be necessary, would it? Lord Kane is swamped. Why would a small fry like me matter? How long had it been since Umit, the so-called sea transport king, had groveled? Too long. Yamato, at a loss, glanced to Kuma for guidance. Kuma's solution was simple. Take him along. There was room enough on the ship for one Umit. Inside the castle in Wano country, Kane set down the World Economic Journal with a faint click. Sk. The Marines move fast. He folded the paper and said with a trace of pity, Doffy, your Shichibukai status has been revoked. That was to be expected, Don Quixote do Flamingo murmured. Robin, standing to one side, added casually, the Marines don't need a 7 warlord of the sea who's already been defeated and captured to make themselves look better. Doflamingo knelt on the floor below them, heavy sea stone shackles biting into his wrists. He didn't lift his head. His face was slack from pain and exhaustion. Only the eyes behind his sunglasses remained alert, sharp as ever. Seeing him remain inert, Kane's interest waned. He closed the paper with a flick. Law, what do you want to do with him? Me? Law blinked, surprised. I get to decide? Kane nodded. Kill him or imprison him. Your call. Recruit him? Kane hadn't even considered it. 3 years ago, he might have tried to recruit someone of Doflamingo's caliber, but not now. Doflamingo, who had been silent until then, raised his head with an effort. Though battered and shackled, the old arrogance flared through. Kane, are you trying to humiliate me? Letting Trafalgar Law, the orphan taken in long ago and never considered a true member, decide the fate of Don Quixote do Flamingo? Doflamingo balked at the idea. Doffy, Kane said coolly, leaning forward, a hard smile at the corner of his mouth. You misunderstand. You are my captive now. Captives have no right to choose. He looked to Law. Make your decision. The executives of the Don Quixote family turned, pleading at once. Hey, Law, don't kill the young master. Have you forgotten who took you in when you were sick and homeless? Baby Five sobbed loudly, trying to tug on any shred of loyalty Law might still feel toward the family and their young master. She didn't understand how important Rosinante had been to Law. The plea only steeled Law's expression. His eyes went cold and unyielding. I choose to kill him. Understood, Khan said without emotion. You do the honors. Law drew Kikoku with emotion that was all quiet, concentrated menace. Any last words? Doflamingo strained to look past him at the family executives huddled behind, bound and crying. For a long moment he stared at them, and an almost relieved smile crossed his face. Finally, he looked at Kane. Fufufu, if possible, take in my foolish subordinates. Young master, Doffy! Their cries filled the hall. Kane merely nodded. I agree. His tone was casual. He didn't care about loyalty or inheritance, but he wanted the Hobi no Mi. The Don Quixote officers, however, would not bend. Pika's voice, high and comical yet unshakable, cut through. Once a member of the Don Quixote family, always a member. Exactly, Dellinger said, his youthful face set in resolve. Even if we die, we will never betray our king. Well done, you haven't disgraced our family. Trebol laughed, delighted, his slimy features trembling with excitement. They are loyal. Doffy, you've a fine crew. Kane expected as much. Aside from Blackbeard's lot, pirates in this world often shared fierce loyalty to their captains. Doflamingo looked over his comrades, eyes bright with something like pride. He laughed, loud, hearty, as if this were the finest moment of his life. Do it. I never thought I'd die by your hand. Pointing at Law, he sneered. When you killed Corazon, your own brother, you should have known this day would come. Law's voice was ice. There was no fluctuation, only the cold blade and a flash of light. A terrible, spreading pain hit Doflamingo. His strength drained away as blood welled. He used his last breath to sweep a final gaze over the subordinates who had stood with him through everything. Then his eyelids fell. He was gone. Young master! Doffy! The cries rose and broke into wails as the executives watched their leader collapse. Law withdrew Kikoku expressionless. Blood beaded on the blade. He looked back to Kane and asked simply, what about them? Kane, for the first time letting something like softness touch his face, hardened again. Let them go down and join Don Quixote do Flamingo. He gave the order. Since the captives were useless to him, their only road was death. Trebal spat curses at Kane, glaring with all the venom he had left. Kane, we'll meet you in hell. The Don Quixote family won't forgive you. Family? Kane raised an eyebrow. You mentioned family. I almost forgot. Didn't you have another executive, Virgo, who's an undercover agent in the Marines? Trebol froze. Cold sweat broke out on his brow. Virgo's infiltration had been top secret. Only a few core members knew. How could Kane possibly know? As Trebol flashed through 1,000 frantic calculations, a dangerous idea crept up. If Kane exposed Virgo and the Marines believed it, Marineford might think Kane had murdered a loyal vice admiral. That could trigger a war between the Marines and Kane's forces. A grim anticipation stirred, but it was cut short by Kane's next move. Slowly, with an air of theatrical calm, Kane produced a Den Mushi and dialed a number in front of everyone. The snail buzzed and vibrated. A faint, formal voice answered, "Hello?" On the snail's face, a little image of a marine cap and a braided beard twitched into view. "Hello? Sengoku?" Kane's tone was genial, as if calling an old friend. The Don Quixote executives all fell silent. "Sengoku? Is that really Fleet Admiral Sengoku?" they thought, eyes wide. Trebol trembled. "Hello," Kane went on smoothly. "I'm calling to report that you have a pirate undercover inside the Marines." The captives' mouths opened. Kane played the part of an aggrieved citizen to perfection. Virgo, nicknamed Demon Bamboo, was sent into the Marines 9 years ago on Doflamingo's instructions. He's risen all the way to Vice Admiral, hasn't he? "You must do better at background checks," he went on, mock concerned. "A pirate has worked his way up to Vice Admiral. How corrupt are the Marines? If this continues, how can you fight us?" From the other end, Sengoku's voice was tight. "How do you know this?" Khan shrugged. "That's not your concern. I only want you to use your blade to kill someone for me, believe it or not." The mimic of Sengoku on the Den Mushi twitched at the corner of its mouth. Before the call could continue, there was a click as Sengoku hung up. Kane tutted. "Tsk, old man," still quick-tempered. He looked at the snail, now giving only a busy signal, and then back at the pallid Don Quixote officers. "Your last scrap of luck and hope is gone. You can put down your burdens and move on properly." He nodded to Fukurokuju, who stepped forward without hesitation. It wouldn't do to have a doctor stain his hands with too much blood, and Fukurokuju understood. With a curt bow, he signaled his ninjas. They dragged Trebol and the others out of the hall and began to carry out the sentence. Trebol's shouts turned into a frenzy of curses. "Damn you, Kane! Are you even a pirate? Colluding with the Marines. May you die horribly." Muffled cries replaced the curses as the ninjas clamped hands over mouths. Kane ignored the noise as if it were nothing more than flies. He picked up a pen and returned to the paperwork on the desk. King Riku had already left for Dressrosa with his family. Kane had no one to hand these tedious duties to. Documents needed attention. A minuteness later, a series of short, muted thuds, blades through flesh, came from beyond the doors. The last muffled woo died away. Silence followed. Corpses were dragged off and disposed of with mechanical efficiency. Maids came in with buckets and rags and scoured the floor. 10 minutes later, the hall was spotless, as if nothing at all had happened. The Don Quixote family that once terrorized a nation had been reduced in a single morning to history. Meanwhile, Marineford was thrown into turmoil. After Sengoku had ended the call, his face darkened as if soaked in ink. He immediately summoned Chief Staff Officer Tsuru and relayed Kane's report in full. "I do have some recollection of this, Virgo," Sengoku said, tapping the desk. "When he first joined the Marines, he was unusually effective, decisive, even ruthless. At the time, I thought it was a harsh form of justice. But looking back, his motives are questionable." Tsuru listened, brows knitting. Finally, she sighed softly. "If a pirate says this, it's an incredible embarrassment. But Kane's claim explains a lot about G5's special practices." Her words put the missing pieces together. The G5 branch's pirate-like behavior, refusal to obey Marineford, and the brutal treatment of pirates all made more sense if Virgo's influence had been at work. Regardless of Kane's motives, whether this is true or not, we must launch the most thorough internal investigation into Virgo. Her voice was steady and resolute. "I will take this on." Sengoku looked at his old comrade with a complicated mixture of trust and regret. He knew what her acceptance would mean, upsetting allies, exposing rot that reached high into the organization, but he made his decision. "If Virgo's true identity is confirmed, you will lead a special investigative task force and carry out a full purge within the Marines." Tsuru nodded without hesitation. Age and wisdom had taught her the stakes, but also the necessity. "Understood." Sengoku bowed his head. I'm sorry, Tsuru. She smiled and waved him off. If you meet insurmountable obstacles, dismiss this old woman. Then she turned and left, already moving to prepare for the storm to come. Wano country, inside the general's castle. The smell of blood still hung in the air. Umit stood frozen, watching the members of the Donkasodi family fall one by one, quick, clean, like wheat cut at harvest. He held his breath without thinking, not even daring to swallow loudly, as if any noise might draw the attention of the grim figure above him. Kane had ordered the bodies cleared, and then, as if forgetting Umit existed, returned to his work. He handled papers with an unnerving calm, never glancing up. That silent indifference terrified Umit more than any blade. Sweat chilled his spine. What did Kane intend? Kill him, imprison him, or let him go? His thoughts scattered. Minutes crawled by, and Umit grew paler and more unsteady. When Kane finally finished the last document, he looked up as if remembering someone, and said casually, "Oh, you, Umit." The name hit Umit like a blow. His legs went weak, and he nearly dropped to his knees. "Lord Kane, I'm useful. Don't kill me. I'll buy my life." His voice cracked with panic. He was certain his head could roll any second. Kane leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, watching with the same detached amusement. "Tell me your value." "I have money, 1 billion berries. No, 2 billion. Please." Umit blurted a number. "And devil fruits. 3 zone devil fruits in my collection. I'll give them all." "Foolish." Kane shook his head. "If I kill you, your money and your devil fruits are still mine." Umit's mouth twitched. He forced himself to keep bargaining. I will serve the beast's pirates. All the logistics channels and fleets I've run for years, I'll merge them unconditionally into beast's logistics." If even that couldn't move Kane, then Umit would accept his fate. Then, amid his chaotic fear, a clearer thought surfaced. If Kane had wanted him dead, he would already be dead. There must be some purpose in keeping him alive. Kane finally smiled, a small, satisfied curl at his lips. A wise choice. He snapped his fingers and nodded to the nearby ninja. "Go untie him." The ninja obeyed. Free, Umit stumbled forward and bowed so low his forehead nearly touched the floor. "From this day forward, I, Umit, and everything I own follow Lord Kane." His voice was abject. Kane nodded without warmth. He didn't believe loyalty could be bought with a few words, but he could make it. "Law, take out his heart." Umit's face went white. He thought Kane had changed his mind and would end him after all. He cried, "Lord Kane, I swear my loyalty." "Don't worry. I don't want your life. You'll know in a moment." Kane's voice was coldly calm. Law stepped forward without expression and raised his long sword. An invisible dome enveloped Umit. A flash of light, the room seemed to pause. When it ended, a palm-sized but still beating chunk of crimson flesh lay in Law's hand. He turned and presented it to Kane. "Is this his heart?" Umit's hand flew to his chest. There was a gap where his heart should be. He stared at the heart in Kane's palm, trembling between shock and disbelief. "Of course." Kane examined the heart with detached interest. Attached to it was a small platinum device, a pacemaker. He curled his fingers around the organ, pressing slightly. The beat grew sluggish. Then, tightening his grip, he strangled the rhythm. Umit felt an invisible fist squeeze his own chest. His heart faltered. Agony tore through him. Darkness clawed at his vision. His legs gave out and he crumpled, lungs burning with the desperate need for air that never filled them. For a moment, death felt certain. Kane released his grip. The heart in his hand thudded back to life. Umit inhaled like a drowning man surfacing, shaking uncontrollably. "I'll keep it for now," Kane said. "You don't object, do you?" Umit nodded fervently, too weak to protest. Inside, he screamed that he would rather his heart remain in his chest and be attacked there than be someone else's lifeline. Outwardly, he managed only a wet, grateful smile. Kane stood and his expression turned businesslike. "Our cooperation will be secret. Publicly, you'll pay the 2 billion berries and the 3 devil fruits you promised as ransom for being spared." "Understood," Umit gasped. "And I'll continue all operations as usual, logistics, trade, but I have a long-term mission for you." Kane fixed him with a look. "Use all your channels and connections to help me find one devil fruit. Its name is the dark fruit." That name was Kane's true reason for sparing him. Umit nodded after a brief pause, not fully realizing the implications. To most, the dark fruit was a dread devil fruit. Powerful but dangerous, it couldn't elementalize and supposedly amplified pain when hurt. Kane had judged that locating it would be difficult, possibly impossible if the fruit was some strange dormant zone. Worse, if the fruit was destined for Teach, Blackbeard, Kane would never allow that outcome. He intended to capture Teach within 3 years and deny him the dark fruit at all costs, even forcing him to eat other devil fruits if necessary. With Umit's fate and business temporarily settled, Kane stretched. Minor matters done, it was time to train. He felt a breakthrough nearing, a power coalescing like a held breath. Time, once set loose, did not halt. A year slid by. In that year, the beast's pirates expanded fast. More merfolk and fishmen settled in Wano's inland seas. Trade networks grew, and Den Mushi, bearing the beast's mark, began to spread across the new world. Not every household had one yet, but on average, their presence was being felt everywhere. Still, Kane cared about only one thing: strength. In a sea where the strong preyed on the weak, absolute power was the foundation of everything. On Onigashima, in Kane's private chambers, he sat gnawing at a meteorite larger than his torso, bits of rock crunching between his teeth. He paused, burped, a satisfied, almost spiritual sound. He'd been gnawing rocks for a year, and the accumulation of power felt like it was finally nearing a line. Finally, has this day come? He murmured, tossing the partially chewed meteorite aside. Yet something held back the surge. He tried to call the nascent strength forward, but an invisible barrier kept it muffled. No matter how much I accumulate, I need a catalyst to shatter the bottleneck. His gaze drifted to the main hall. There, Kaido held a giant sake gourd and watched the geishas with bleary eyes. When Kaido narrowed them, Kane spoke plainly. "Mr. Kaido, the time has come. Let's duel for the beasts." Kaido's drunkenness vaporized into fierce grin and roaring laughter. "I've waited for this day." His massive presence tightened like a spring. Word spread through Onigashima like wildfire. The two would fight. The crews reacted with a mix of disbelief and eager fervor. A duel of two Yonko, rare, historic. Pirates poured out to witness it. They gathered at a barren, unnamed island off Wano. Seabirds rarely nested there. Today it thrummed with ships, dozens of beasts' flags snapping in the wind. Onagashima's crews packed the waters, hungry for the spectacle. People shoved and cursed on deck to get a view, but none dared set boots on the island itself. This land belonged to the two combatants. On the ships, voices rose. Page 1 raised a telescope, admiring, as expected of Kane. Is he really going to usurp the throne? Ulti grinned, intoxicated with the promise of chaos. Jack folded his arms, torn between loyalties. Queen bellowed support for Kaido. King stood silent at the bow, his face uncommonly solemn. On the Rayquaza, the mood was tense. Kozuki Hiyori, Violet, Robin and the others watched anxiously. Yamato's confidence glowed. "Don't worry, Kane'll teach my dad a lesson." Bonnie worried at Yamato's zeal and whispered to Bartholomew Kuma, "Dad, will daughters all be like this?" "I won't, will I?" Kuma sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Yamato is a special case." Across the crowd, Eneru folded his arms, eyes of observation haki searching, longing to take part. Zoro gripped his sword and stared at the island with fierce longing. "One day," he muttered. Ace touched his hat, fire burning in his eyes. "Now it begins," Violet called, and in that instant a pressure wave surged outward. The sea, which had been calm, boiled. Waves climbed and roared. The massive warships pitched and shuddered like toys caught in a sudden storm. The crowd's excitement snapped into alert fear as the sky and ocean answered to the power gathering on that barren shore.